Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 7 of the Deadliest Warrior podcast. The most anticipated episode ever. Now, it is the Maori versus the Shaolin monk. We're coming off a big week, boys. We had like a big recording last week, kind of like an after party, to the point we had to take a week off before we could even return here.
Yeah. True.
As always, I'm Lucas, joined by my co-hosts,
Craig Taylor.
And Matt Davis.
And for the first time, we have our first international guest coming from America's top hat. I'll let him introduce himself.
Wagwan. Call me Walsh. Catch me in the comments section. Hit me with a like.
Bouncing his camera on his knee.
Yep.
Hey, you know, we keep it informal here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Casual as always. And then also, don't forget about our lovely engineer.
We do over there on the ones and twos, as we always say.
Off camera.
Brendan. We got Brendan. All right, so this episode in itself, at least for me, I feel like it was almost a forgotten episode. Whenever we were originally planning the show, if you were like, oh, what are the episodes you remember? This was like probably bottom of the barrel for season 1 for me, which is why I volunteered to host on this one, because I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's get to the intros here. So, shut up. Flawless. I needed to scroll down. So they start off, the Shaolin monk, they call it the ultimate kung fu killing machine from China, which is a bit excessive, I think. And then the Maori is the fierce, unforgiving slayer of the South Seas. And I can honestly say I've done, as you could tell, very little research on either of these warriors beforehand. So it's pretty much like open floor today for me to learn about these guys besides what the show gives us. So my first question I want to bring you guys to is, do you know anything about these warriors beforehand, or did you have to do a lot of research for this episode? Did you, even from like movies, Hollywood, because I know that the monk and everything.
You want to? All right, well, I guess I'll start then. So I didn't know a whole lot of factual stuff about the Shaolin monk. I just knew, because monks in that type of like, it's a type of Hollywood trope, like the guy in the orange like gi doing like super karate moves. You see Shaolin monks in a whole lot of like art too. Like I was joking earlier today how like Krillin from Dragon Ball Z is dressed up and got like the markings of like a Shaolin monk, and I was really interested. I knew a little bit about Buddhism going into this, and I always liked the Shaolin monks even when this episode first aired. And I was really fascinated in some of their weapons, especially the twin hooks, so they were a pleasure to research, and I'll get into their history when we get there. So, Greg?
Yeah, I think it depends on sort of what you mean by, like, have you heard about them before? Because when I first watched this, when I was like a dumb little kid, I didn't know who they were. And I think most people watching probably didn't. But I feel like maybe because of Deadliest Warrior, they've become kind of more prevalent with like Moana. A lot of I think the New Zealand rugby team does like the haka dance, and more people know what that is. And
Oh, we see plenty of that during this episode.
yeah. So I think that in between, and probably directly due to the Deadliest Warrior episode, there's more awareness of Maori culture. But yeah, I had to research some, and honestly, the show gets a lot of it right.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I'll say this, and I think the reason, maybe Walsh have something to say about this, I think the reason is because unlike the ninja or the samurai, most people at this time had no idea who the Maori were, so there were no expectations to live up to.
Yeah,
it's not
true.
like the real life ninja would be way more boring. And so Maori, they were like, well, let's just get it right, because no one's gonna, no one has any expectations. Yeah. So I think that's probably why it's one of the most accurate warriors we've seen, at least from my research. So,
yeah,
nice.
I would say I had it pretty accurate as well.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you said, the rugby teams. It feels like every like few months now, there's a viral video of some New Zealand people doing like a haka dance or something.
Yeah.
There's one for like their school is doing it for their teacher who retired or something. Like. They just do it like whenever they feel like it now. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just myself too. I mean, everyone knows the Shaolin monks, or at least knows like the Hollywood movies with them in that like very distinct outfit. But I honestly, even after seeing this episode, still too, we went back and reviewing it. I was like, "What's a Maori?"
Yeah.
So yeah, a little more obscure. But once again, we find ourselves in a fight club in a cutting-edge battleground using 21st century science. We're first introduced to the Shaolin monk. They give him a height of about 5'7", which is about average, I would say. They give about 145 pounds and no armor, about 5 pounds of gear, which might be debatable, but it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, these stats have become less and less relevant.
Yeah.
As these, like, matchups have
I mean, the
gone
twin
on.
hooks themselves are like 5 pounds each, right? Like,
I tried to come up with something to like pick apart there, but there's just an average man
there's
with
I
nothing.
guess
It's
the
just a
only
guy in a robe.
Yeah, the only thing to remark about the body stats is they do make mention like multiple times in this episode. The Maori are always like saying that they're the bigger guys, and like Dr. Dorian says that too. Like at the very end, he's like, "I thought the bigger Maori would have the advantage against the little Shaolin," and
it's not that much of a difference.
but the stats they're plugging in,
Yeah.
it's like the Maori has like maybe
He's like 2 inches on him.
yeah, like
Yeah.
2 inches and like 30 pounds on him or something
yeah,
like that.
they bring the Maori. They
It's just like
firstly they introduced the Maori as the bloodthirsty brute. They
Yeah.
really drive home the viciousness of the Maori this
Yeah.
entire episode.
Yeah.
But they
That's
bring
what
him
that's
in-
the first thing I had written down was like, this is the biggest trope that Deadliest Warrior loves to just like hold on to is brute strength versus agility and technique.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think whenever you hear Maori and how they're talking about the Maori, you think of like Maui from Moana. Like
I've
Isn't that one guy, like,
at the
huge
edge
in
of the
that,
water.
too?
yeah, like that's what they think of with the Maori warrior. But if you look at pictures of them, they're just like normal like islander people, like Polynesian people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
That's one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Can
they
we
do-
get a tongue count for this episode?
Yeah. Yeah, they also don't mention the time frame at all. Like they say, like I think they mentioned Maori at this time or this or that.
What
But they
time
don't say
do they get? Yeah, they don't give a time, do they?
no. I mean, from my understanding, there's not a huge difference in like time periods for the Maori. Like they kind of just
Well, it's been in like it's probably like within like 300 years before the Europeans, but after they got there.
yeah, because there are some stories of like famous Maori like adopting gunpowder. They didn't commonly do it, but unlike the samurai, where maybe it makes a huge difference, like what period you're talking about, the Maori pretty consistent.
They seem kind of like, just to me, without doing any research, they seem like one of those just tribes of people that were like, they were born and raised on this island, kind of little influence from the outside world, and they've just kind of stayed the same for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the isolation.
But
Yeah.
they bring them in. It's a height of 5'9", so about 2-inch difference, 180 pounds, and they, for contrast, the Shaolin was 145. So really not this big painted
Yeah,
picture. That's
it's
way different.
not
You'd expect it to be like
nearly-
over 6 foot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Two
nearly
girls.
the difference that they highlight in like the Viking Samurai episode, where you have like 5'3", 130 pounds versus like 5'11", 180. These guys, I mean, I guess they're in a different weight class, but it gets brought up so much. They're constantly just like, oh, the little Shaolin, he's gonna cut my arm off, and I'm gonna take his head off with a rock.
Me and Matt were doing a British
That's a
accent.
great New Zealand accent.
You're right. I'm sorry to any Kiwi listeners, but I'm just going to be doing a terrible version of a British accent for the whole.
We'll get into the history of some of these warriors a little bit, as we were starting to touch on it already. So just because they're introduced first, Matt, I'm going to go over to you. And now that we've seen both warriors, can you tell us a little bit about the Shaolin monks, who they were, and they kind of seem, we referenced it, they kind of get the Hollywood treatment a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Is how they're portrayed in Hollywood and these movies kind of accurate, or is it a little mixed up?
Well, there's definitely some like modern theatricality going on, but I was surprised to find how much legitimacy like is portrayed in the show, how accurate some of the stuff actually is.
This episode is truly a first for
Yeah.
the entire series.
Yeah, I think we'll find that when we get to the experts too. But I just wanted to say that there's a little bit of a time problem with the Shaolin as well, like what era they're in. because the Shaolin Monastery was founded, it's believed to have been founded in 525 AD. And the Shaolin Monastery is still around today in like communist China and stuff. And it's been destroyed a couple times like throughout history.
Is there only one?
Yes, so
They talk about it later in the episode.
why
too.
don't I get into this then? So, what is a Shaolin monk? This title is specifically referring to the Zen Buddhists of the Shaolin Monastery in Dangfeng, China. It is said that the monks in this monastery were taught the art of kung fu, which we also hear called wushu in this episode, by the first master, Bodhidharma, to bring Buddhism from India to China. So it's said that this Bodhidharma character came up from India and established, he was the first guy to bring Buddhism into China, and he established the Shaolin Temple and the Shaolin Monastery. And the monastery is named after a nearby like mountain called like the Shoshi Mountain. So I wanted to get into this. It's also said that Shaolin Kung Fu or Wushu is what all other Kung Fu descends from. I wanted to get into this. What is a monastic? Okay, so monk is another phrase for monastic. And in Buddhism, a monastic is someone who has dedicated themselves, depending on the school of thought, completely to the religion or philosophy of Buddhism.
Is that a Chinese word? Because it doesn't sound. It sounds like a.
I'm not entirely sure if monastic is a Chinese word.
Can we get the etymology, Brennan? Can you check that?
Yeah, but Jamie, pull that up. These monks would shave their heads and change their names and forfeit all worldly possessions to live and study at the temple. There you would study meditation, the Eightfold Path, and then become teachers of Buddhism to other people seeking guidance. So martial arts walks hand in hand, sort of, with the study of Buddhism, especially something like Wushu. Because one of the key tenets in Buddhism is meditation. You meditate daily. And if you're a regular practitioner, you might do 10 minutes to an hour. But for these monks, you're doing like several hours a day where you're just sitting and meditating. And this is how you practice mindfulness. So you learn how to keep your emotions in check. If you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic, your emotional response might be to give them the middle finger. In Buddhism, they would say that not only are you causing that guy some suffering, but you're causing yourself suffering by being angry about something that's already happened, that is not going to change. So when you practice,
Sound like my fucking dad.
So
honestly,
when you practice mindfulness, you're training your body to be like calm and think in the moment, like, all right, I'm not going to give that. I'm just going to let it go, basically. Keeps your emotions from running your life. So practicing martial arts forms and learning moves is a form of meditation for these guys. Spending several hours a day kind of, here's me doing fake martial arts moves. Doing these can help you practice, and in modern day, every Chinese student is actually required to learn Tai Chi while they're in school. Now, Tai Chi is not the same as Kung Fu. Tai Chi is mainly a shadow boxing, and the government of China might have me terminated for this, but is shown multiple times to not be an effective fighting style in like actual combat, whereas Wushu or Kung Fu is also pretty theatrical, and there's not a whole lot of practical like fighters that actually use it. But Tai Chi is a meditation tool. It's recommended by a lot of doctors as a good stress reliever, and I think Wushu provides something similar for the Shaolin. But it is legitimate, and I'll get into more when we get into the weapons training, like how that affects their ethos as actual warriors.
Yeah, I think I got some questions written down too about how specific weapons even like apply to that mentality and everything that they have.
Yeah, I guess all I'll say before I'll let you kick it over to Craig and Walsh is that Shaolin are trained So if you're trained at the Shaolin Monastery, you are required to learn 18 traditional weapons and become a master of at least one of them. So this is a warrior that is built for Deadliest Warrior. It literally has a built-in weapon set, and they still kind of caulk it up a bit, as the Brits would say.
It wouldn't be an episode of Deadliest Warrior if they didn't.
They still managed to mess it up a little bit, even though any Google search, you can Google the 18 traditional Shaolin weapons, and you'll get like the first link will tell you what all of them are. So
it's not as bad as it could be, though. I mean, most of them are this time. So
it's not as bad, and they do bring in like that actual wushu master guy to demonstrate stuff, which was pretty cool. So
I can't wait to get to him. All right, this one, Craig and Walsh. I'm gonna let you guys go kind of one after another, but who are the Maori? Where did they come from? Where did they go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
So disrespectful.
But seriously, I mean, we kind of touched on these kind of island people from New Zealand. Just kind of give a little bit of background of who they are, just a little bit of history on them, and they make mention that they're from New Zealand, and they also refer to them as Polynesian as well.
Yeah, that was something.
I got something on that.
Okay, you want to go, Walsh?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so like, basically the whole area of Polynesia, the most accepted theory, I guess, is that there was several mass migrations of these tribes throughout like Taiwan, the Philippines, throughout from like 2000 BC to like 1500 AD, just like slow migrations. I don't know what caused, like, I didn't really dive into what might have caused them. I don't think it's really known. It could be things like volcanoes or like natural disasters maybe pushed them away. But they arrived in New Zealand at around 1320 was what the number that I found. And then I guess they were there for like maybe 300-400 years until the Europeans arrived. The show specifically mentions that they were never conquered as like a tribe or a culture, like a people. But I'd argue that the Europeans basically conquered them with colonialism. That's pretty much all I really have on them. Maori, or I got one more thing, is like the word Maori means like ordinary or natural, and they used it to separate themselves from deities or like the gods that they worshipped.
Yeah,
nice.
I found pretty similar stuff. That was one of my first questions, was the difference between Maori and Polynesian, because I mean obviously they're different, but you don't always look into it. And yet the main thing that I thought was interesting was that they were Polynesians, but they kind of, like Walsh said, migrated, and you know,
it's basically like how there's different tribes of natives like all over the place, but because they're on islands, they're much more isolated from each other.
Yeah, and there's similarities. Yeah, as for the conquer thing, I mean that's kind of a bold claim to never be conquered.
Yeah.
And I mean, in terms of like colonialism, the main thing I saw is that a lot like the Native Americans, they would make deals with the New Zealand government for land, and then they ended up New Zealand sold the land that the Maori had to like the British, which is like classic white colonist
classic bait and switch.
Yeah, and nowadays, like, there are some protected areas that, like, in New Zealand that the government sanctioned, like, oh, this is, like, a reserve for this type of organism. And the Maori are like, well, that was our land. They're like, well, it's a reserve, so don't be mad. So that's, you know, a lot of analogs to Native American.
Yeah, it sounds like a reservation, kind of like.
Yeah. So that's, like, kind of where they're at. And I don't know if they were ever conquered in war, but
they have, like, a pretty large population, which actually kind of surprised me. Like, at New Zealand, they have almost 800,000 people who identify as Maori.
Yeah. And that, sort of like Native Americans, is growing, and, like, the reclamation is now an important political topic of, you know, for a lot of people who identify as Maori. Some people ask, like, apparently they're not treated as badly as Aborigines, according to, like, this one source I saw. I'm not going to quantify the amount of suffering of a group of people, the white colonists, but they're sort of left relatively alone, but they've been slighted here and there from the New Zealand government. So
I kind of got a follow-up question for you, see if you found anything about it. How was there, like, because they don't really bring it up on the show too much, except for mentioning that warriors are chosen at birth. Did you find anything on how they're actually structured? Of like, are some people warriors, some people are just regular like Maori citizens, or is everyone kind of like a warrior?
Well, I mean, I think from what I saw, it's basically just like most of the boys are pretty much trained to fight. Maybe not some of them not as hard, but maybe some of them are more specialty in like hunting. But from what I saw, it's probably just the basic like men fight and hunt, and women take care and do the cooking and stuff.
yeah, it's a very patriarchal culture, and to kind of get into their culture a little bit, I know this is probably a follow-up question you have later on, but I think it's important understanding the Maori. I noticed a lot of masculine themes in their culture in terms of dominating one another. There's a big emphasis on like your enemy, you humiliate them, you kill them, then you eat them. Yeah. And then you do that dance, and then to poop them out is this great shame to them.
The greatest insult.
Yeah. And also like there are stories of chiefs. They have the head of some person that they defeated and they keep it mummified to mock.
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of emphasis on masculinity and like conquering stuff like that. So I feel like that's something you'll see a lot in Maori society.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah, it's a warrior culture. Like
Yeah.
they fight each other. They constantly in battles with other tribes for revenge or just for like supplies.
A real Rogan-esque culture.
All right, so
Jamie, pull that up.
Yeah.
pull that up. So back in the Fight Club, Jeff and Max are brought in, and for all of you following along at home, sorry. There's no new titles for Jeff this time.
Well, one thing I'll say real quick about Jeff, they do pronounce the Drew Sky as Jeff Demoulin. So I wonder if he saw some of the episodes and complained about how they were pronouncing his name.
Jeff Demoulin.
He's like, it's French Canadian.
It's Demoulin, not Demoulin.
Yeah.
They bring in our boy Armand Dorian in his most common position he can be found in, holding a gel torso open, and he says, "It's pretty efficient."
Oh, that's a deep laceration.
Yeah.
And then Max Geiger, right before they kick off the action, says like one of the dumbest quotes. This battle taking place in this machine today, it's two warriors who have never met. This is a unique battle. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Kinda
like the theme of the show?
Yeah, they probably try to lead with that if you have never seen an episode
Yeah,
before.
I
But I
guess.
do
It's
get
just-
what you're saying.
This is a unique battle.
Yeah, we've seen this so
It's
many
always
times.
every
that,
episode.
like, the idea of it being a unique battle is sort of the pitch of the whole dang show.
But this is...
I think they gave multiple plugs to Slytherin Studios in this episode too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Slytherin
probably.
Studios.
Slytherin Studios. This is a special episode in one unique way, though. We were talking about this earlier. I think this is the only episode, at least in season 1, where they have 3 experts per team. Because I remember I was writing down the experts, and I wrote down like the first 2, and then I was on the third one. I was like, wait, I already wrote 2 down. Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
I like forgot that they did the 3 and 3.
Yeah, I think
One of them
Yeah.
was just like a dude that showed up for one weapon. Or
I can't even remember another episode where they bring on like
That's a- yeah.
3 for each team, but maybe we'll find out in our grand journey along the way here.
Yeah, that's why whenever we were dividing like duties, Lucas hosted, we're like, yeah, good fucking luck. You have 6 people to look up.
Hey, it's fine. Hey, this
I
is a
took some
really-
weight off his shoulders.
Yeah. This is a cool episode because I feel like, and we'll be seeing this in a minute here, a lot of these experts are legit. I would say some of the Maori guys are a little extra legit, and I feel like they almost brought in an extra Shaolin guy as like, they come out straight and they do this for the first time. We're like, this guy's an actor.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we'll start off with the Maori experts, and I'm going to give my disclaimer before we get into anything here. I'm going to mispronounce some words because just forgive me for that ahead of time. But we got probably the whitest sounding guy here, Seamus Fitzgerald, who's originally shown with his face all painted up in the traditional Maori. I don't know if it's supposed to be the tattoos or if they wear face paint. We can get into that later.
I wonder if in like production, like that was the name of the IRA guy, and they like swapped it and they forgot.
Oh crap!
Yeah.
The IRA is represented by Muka Muka.
Okay, cut that.
Brendan hit the
Cut
womp.
All right, so our boy Seamus here. He's a Maori weapons historian, which is slightly better than the weapons expert title they usually give people.
Yeah.
So it gave him a little credibility out of the gate. They call him a 6th-degree master of Mao Kayaha, the Maori martial arts. And they cut to him with the makeup off afterwards, and this dude has like, if you've ever looked into the eyes of a serial killer in like a documentary, this dude looks psychotic.
He is intense.
I said he looks like David Drummond from Disturbed.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
He's like zooted. He's like zooted on set. And he's like, the Maori are gonna destroy.
His eyes are like, one's looking here, one's there. He's like, they'll kill you without remorse. What's our boy doing today? He's the director of talent at the Polynesian Cultural Club and lives in Lae, Hawaii. He has a master of philosophy in Maori, which I guess you can get a master degree in Maori in Hawaii from BYU.
I was a Maori major.
Yeah, I majored in
I wasn't sure if that was in the actual language or if it was just like.
I guess the language would make sense.
Yeah, well, they call him like the weapons historian too, and from what I found out, there was a bunch of, I was trying to even look into like the curriculum at this BYU in Hawaii. There was like, it wasn't just like one class on like Maori history. There was like a whole catalog, and they kind of blend this whole like Maori, Polynesian, and then they bring in like people of Samoan descent too, like also kind of all like have classes and stuff that they teach there, and a lot of people who identify as like Maori, they're like, oh, I'm also Samoan, I'm also Polynesian. So it was very confusing to research.
Well, the show mentions that he's what, like a 6th degree in Maori martial arts, but like nothing I found on him of information provided by him or from the university mentioned anything about martial arts
also,
at all.
is there? I mean, I might be a 16th degree black belt Maori martial arts. Well, I think about it.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you guys about that Mao Kayaha. Did anyone find anything? Is that like a real form of martial arts at the Maori?
Don't look at me. I was looking up wushu.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I found like they teach Maori weapon arts. I don't know if it's like as in depth as stuff you see in the UFC. I don't know if we'll see a Maori warrior in the in the octagon, but yeah, I mean they do teach like classes and how to use like the taiaha and stuff I've seen. So
it was surprising. I thought like the whole Maori culture was going to be pretty self-contained and there wasn't going to be like courses and stuff on it. So that was enlightening to kind of see that.
They've actually had a bit of a cultural renaissance.
Yeah. It's like seeing a rebirth in like Hawaii and everything. The studies for it.
So it's funny you said that because I'm trying to look up. There is a New Zealand fighter in the UFC who does have some Maori tattoos.
There we go.
I'm
trying to find. I'm going through a whole.
Wasn't there a Maori WWE star too, or something?
Yeah,
like
there
that?
was. He was a real big guy.
Roman Reigns.
Robert Whittaker.
Oh yeah, he's a big name too.
Yeah, Robert Whittaker's
should have got him as an expert.
He's got the Shaolin he's got Shaolin tats. No, he's got like the Maori
he's got both. Oh my
shoulder.
god.
Fights for New Zealand. So yeah, just thought that was funny.
On to my next and my most favorite expert from the Maori team. And that is Jared Wihanji. Sorry about my pronunciation. He is labeled as a Special Forces instructor and a combat instructor and SWAT operator. So initially this was slightly confusing to me because they paint him as this like special operations in the military. But in order to operate on a SWAT team, you usually have to have a police background. So I had to look into that a little bit. And just to clarify for anyone out there, there's not like one SWAT team in the United States because a lot of people,
according to Deadliest Warrior.
Yeah. People have that misconception. A lot of big city police departments, a lot of various different places, even parts of the military have their own SWAT team. So there's many different organizations there's not just one central SWAT team.
What about Ash?
Yeah. From Rainbow Six
Siege.
All right, so everywhere I looked about this guy, about Jared, he had new credentials, different websites. This is like one of the most insane guys we've ever had on this show, just for being overqualified. I was like excited about this guy. So he has his own website, which he has described as the authority of close quarters combat with specialization and integration of firearms, impact weapons, edged weapons, and empty hand combat with heavy emphasis on police, military, and self-defense applications.
Self-defense firearms. I just imagine like an Assassin's Creed too, like or the Gunblade or whatever, like whatever game that was. Like, Jesus.
You guys keep going. I realized that I was going to bring out some props for this episode, so I'm going to go get. I have to go get them. It's not a twin hook.
Darn.
We need to start crowdfunding for our katana.
I told you to stop at the Twin Hook store.
Right.
I wanted to poke my eye out with one. All right, so our boy Jared here, he has been a SWAT and police academy instructor with the Salt Lake City PD, so he does have his police background. He's worked for the company Browning, which if you're into any firearms or weapons or knives, then Browning is a very big company. And he was hired by them as a bladed weapons expert and has his own signature series of knives based off of Maori weaponry. He's been contracted as a close quarters instructor for the Green Berets under the U.S. Army Special Forces. He's been used as a consultant to develop and teach a tactical baton training program in the United States and in Germany, where they developed it. He has a net worth of $14 million. I could not confirm it. He is from New Zealand.
Okay, wait. We might be stepping into snake blocker territory here.
This dude's legit, though.
Are you?
But he's not like crazy like Snake Blocker. He's just like.
Here's the thing. There are people who have nothing on them that you're like, hey, this person's probably legit, but you just don't have a huge resume in entertainment. And then you have the people that have way too big of a resume.
Yeah.
I think in order to seem legit, you have to have just enough. Like the last guy you mentioned, he teaches Polynesian classes. This dude, multi-millionaire SWAT operator who is a master of close quarters combat. I mean, you said he's legit, though?
I didn't get this off Wiki. This was off Salt Lake City Police Department website, U.S. Special Forces, Military Times papers and stuff.
Well, the police would never lie. So so that's legit.
He is from New Zealand also, and supposedly, this is the only thing I could not confirm, he supposedly has ancestors that were from a Maori tribe. But
isn't every Maori person can't
out.
every Maori person claim that?
Yeah. We've established this that I got blood relatives.
We got the Buddha. We got a fat little Buddha here. Let's try to get that, I guess, in frame. And then we have the complete series of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Blu-ray, 1080p, high definition.
Yeah, that's a Best Buy special.
Oh, do you still have my Korra? Oh no, I didn't let you
you
borrow. I let someone else borrow.
You never
that.
lent me out your Korra.
We could have had Korra there too.
If you couldn't hear me in the mic, we got the fat Buddha, rub his belly for good luck, and then we got Avatar: The Last Airbender complete series in honor of the Shaolin monk.
Unopened too. All right, so this guy, I categorize him into a new category, which I call the most overkill, overqualified, but kind of checks out experts.
Okay, I read his Yumpu article. He checks out.
Yumpu verified.
And then I threw out there just as a question, but is there anything I missed on this guy? Because there's a lot. And then
the only thing I noticed was that nowhere in any of his credits did he mention being on Deadliest Warrior.
He's embarrassed.
Yeah.
So that might be the most credible thing in the world. That must make all of his qualifications credible right there.
He's pissed because the Maori loses here. So
ooh, spoilers.
He gives the best tongue of the episode.
Wait, is that him?
Yeah.
Yes.
The Sala guy does it all the time, but he's the one who gives the iconic.
Oh, that guy. Yeah,
the one that. If it's up to us, Craig will make that the thumbnail.
Most iconic frame of the episode. He has extra tongue.
Yeah.
So
he reaches real back.
Right.
Real far.
Yeah,
gets that extra tongue out there.
And the ladies on Twitter are like, "Yo, why can't I get me a man like that?" You know what I'm saying?
Wait, let's do it to the camera. Ready? Brandon, can we get one? He did it, people. Wallace, your turn. Do
checks out.
Wait, Wallace, do it. That was like a Gene Simmons. It wasn't really a Maori.
So talking about having your tongue out the entire episode, the last guy we got Sala Baker, and I put he looks like a villain from Far Cry 3 because I just finished Far Cry 3. He's labeled as a Maori weapons specialist. He is New Zealand-born martial artist where the Maori are from. I didn't need to write that note in. He specializes in island weapons and warfare. I guess that's a type of warfare. He is an actor and stuntman, most known for portraying, I love this, Sauron from the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Really?
That
I
is
think
him.
just the first one.
I think they
I was
credit
on his
him with all
IMDb.
3. Yeah, that was him.
Oh, so he's playing him in the suit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
way.
he's Sauron.
Yeah, he showed up as an extra.
Oh, because it's in New Zealand. That would make sense.
Yes, yeah, because it's filmed in New Zealand, so...
He showed up just to be a background actor and play a couple of like the goblins or whatever's in that movie. I forget. And he did like such a good job. They had him audition for Sauron. They gave him the part. So that's our guy there.
I mean, what do you have to do? You just have to like stand there and raise your hand or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
I
Get
mean,
your fingers cut off.
But to be part of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
he maybe
Well,
the
I think he was
coolest?
also in Deadpool 2. I don't know
Oh,
what
he
he played
is?
in that.
Yeah, he was in
Yeah.
over 240 works, including Deadpool 2 and 2 of the Pirates of the Caribbeans.
You could say he's a successful actor and stuntman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but is he in Moana?
Nope.
I don't know.
He's not a voice actor.
He was Sauron in Moana.
Brandon, can we cue in the oh, we can't play any Disney music. Never mind.
Yeah, we will get taken down immediately. And then I had it as a question, but we already addressed it. He does pretty much every chance that he gets on camera. Either he's doing bleh, or he's
Yeah.
doing the dance that the Maoris do.
Haka gets you going, makes your blood flow, but it also is to let them know we mean business.
I noticed he is the biggest shit talker in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
He's
I think Alfred's or him or Alfred. They
yeah,
kinda go
yeah.
back and forth.
So Alfred is too.
Is he the older one, Alfred?
No, Alfred's the stunt actor that like plays the monk, but Sala is constantly just like, you can cut off my arm off and I will get to you.
Oh, we'll get to that quote.
Oh, you oh, little Shaolin man, what's he gonna do with his sword? Stab me? All right.
Yeah.
So after we wrap up with those experts, we get the little excerpt here, which is where they address that the Maori were never conquered, but had the warrior culture. And their biggest enemies were essentially themselves and the other tribes, that they were constantly just fighting each other for glory and revenge and mana, which is what we have to address now. So he gives one of the best lines of the episode, too, that we just addressed to. He says, "We do not back down." This is Sala. "We do not back down. We will not. If I'm ready to kill someone and you cut my arm off, I'll still get you."
Can we get that in a New Zealand accent?
Right.
I don't know how to do it in New Zealand. So we are told the Maori believe their ancestors live on through their weapons and wish to acquire mana from their enemies. And they do this by essentially consuming parts of their enemies during and after battle. If Craig or Walsh, could you explain to me what this concept is of mana that they believed in and what exactly it meant to them?
And is it related to Magic the Gathering?
That was my
Got
first thought.
Yeah. So it actually has roots within Polynesian culture in general. So I'm sure there are a bunch of different cultures that have life energy, chi in Dragon Ball Z, chakra in Naruto, two of the strongest cultures we have. But mana is like a thing in different forms, and specifically in Polynesian culture, which makes sense because that's where they're from. And yeah, they just believed all types of things had mana. Objects had mana, particularly jade. They believed was a strong source of mana. And as for cannibalism itself, it's sort of debated whether or not they actually did eat people. A lot of people think that was just colonial, trying to paint them as savages, basically. But there's a lot of accounts from like historical records. There's also oral history passed down, not just myths, but like actual history of them talking about eating each other, to where it's kind of accepted they probably did. And I did see a lot of they ate people and they gained their mana. So that is something legit.
I like that in the actual episode, they're just like eating ham.
It's like deli meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is just cold cuts. No, I was actually just reading a book by Robert Louis Stevenson, I believe it is, and it's about his adventures in the South Seas. And he mentioned like one of the first things he mentions is having these like intimidating cannibals on board his ship, just like watching him. So I mean, that could also just be like painting them in a bad light, but I mean, there's enough history of it that I think we could safely say that's probably it probably happened.
Okay.
They really dance around the whole like cannibal word, and they like refuse to say it on the show the
Yeah,
entire time.
yeah.
But then they show them like supposedly eating each other.
Yeah, they're like, oh, they're eating people. They're all cannibals. They like never say that though.
Maybe they had like a limit for the rating on TV.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
All right, so we're gonna move on to our Shaolin experts. So first up, we got Eric Chen, which sounds like the most American Chinese name ever. And then they cut to him, and he's wearing a big USA T-shirt, which I thought was funny.
Hell yeah.
They paint him as a kung fu master and kung fu historian, and he is a master of wushu, the Chinese art of war. And so far, it checked out everything I could find on him. They have that he is a consultant on many movies using kung fu. He's helped with the Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End and Kung Fu Panda. And nowadays, he mostly acts as a coach in wushu, and he teaches a class at the National Wushu Training Center, which I believe is here in America. So, Matt, I know we've kind of danced around the question a little bit, and both words have been thrown out. What is Kung Fu? Is it different from Wushu? Are they the same thing? What exactly are Kung Fu and Wushu?
It's Kung Fu is descendant of Wushu. So there's a lot of different forms of Kung Fu. Wushu is a specific form, and a lot of what I found with Wushu not only involves hand-to-hand motions, but also revolves around certain weapons or items. So like we see the whip chain used in this episode. They call it the whip chain, even though everywhere I've looked, it's called the chain whip,
Which makes more sense.
which is like just a funny like Deadliest Warrior thing to do. Like it's called the whip chain.
I said that they typed it backwards by accident, and then the guy reading
the
it just had to
script.
go with it. Yeah.
Because when you think about it, like it is, when I was looking into it, it's a whip. It's what we would think of as like a leather whip, kind of, except it's made of chain. So it's a chain. It's called the chain whip. But on this show, it's like they just call it the whip chain.
No, let's call it the whip chain.
Like whipped cream. So
The cream whip.
yeah, the cream whip. So that is something that's used in wushu. You can practice that, and I found that all of the weapons used in this episode are considered like wushu weapons that you can train in like the fighting forms with them.
One of the 18 that you've mentioned earlier, right?
So there's a difference between the traditional Shaolin weapons and then what's considered like a wushu weapon. So a lot of Chinese weapons have fighting techniques incorporated into wushu. So the ame piercers, the whip chain. I'm just gonna call it the whip chain, I guess, because of the show. But so all of the traditional Shaolin weapons fall into wushu training, but not all of the wushu training weapons fall into Shaolin weapons.
And then
See
where's
what I
Kung
mean?
Fu sit in that?
Kung Fu, I mean, it's a descendant. I didn't really do a whole lot of research on Kung Fu or like the different forms of it, because they specifically say, from everything I read, the Shaolin are doing wushu.
Mhm.
So
It almost seems like an Americanized name.
So it's not a totally Americanized name. It's a name that started, I think, in China. Like, what you have to understand is this stuff was being done like back in like the 5th century. So there isn't like 100% academically accurate record of like when it started. Because I'll tell you, the farthest thing back I found about wushu was that it was designed by the Shaolin monks based on the different animals they saw around them. Like they were copying moves from animals. And who knows if that's true or not. It kind of sounds...
That sounds good on paper, though.
Yeah, that sounds like a story. And that's the kind of stuff you're going off of with the origin. So I imagine one style was invented, then another style was invented that was based off of that, and so on and so forth. So for the purposes of this podcast and this show, Deadliest Warrior, you can pretty much consider wushu and kung fu like one and the same, essentially. It's a martial arts form. There's a lot of different variations and techniques. Obviously, the kind of moves you're practicing with the chain whip is a lot different than the kind of moves you're practicing with like the twin hooks. So pretty fascinating.
All right, so our next expert here is Wang Wei, and he is also pretty much all the experts on the Shaolin team have a strong background in wushu, and he is a wushu national champion, and then he is a stunt choreographer as well. I found that he started learning wushu at the age of 4, and today, like a lot of the other experts here, he works as a wushu coach in Los Angeles at a school called Wushu Unlimited. That sounds Americanized.
Yeah.
He's written a book on wushu and its teachings, which is a very popular book if you get into the subject. And then he was in the movies Warriors of Virtue, never heard of it, Kill Shelter, never heard of it, and Reign of the Fallen, which I've never heard of.
No Lord of the Rings.
So I just want to say I Googled real quick because I wanted to do the audience justice here. I Googled wushu versus kung fu. And it just basically says both kung fu and wushu are terms that have been used to describe Chinese martial arts. Wushu literally means martial arts, whereas kung fu means skills achieved with time and effort. So I think they're just the same term.
Another word.
Yeah, it's like similar terms for what is describing Chinese martial arts is what it is.
Do you have anything on Wang Wei? I feel like he's not even that big of a part of the episode, because once we get to the demonstrations,
he's there to look like really cool in the background, twirling stuff around, and then he does the whip chain whip.
I think that's all he does.
Yeah, he just does the chain whip demonstration. He doesn't do a lot, I don't think, because I don't think he can speak English.
Yeah,
I don't think he can speak English when we see him. So, like anytime you see him on camera, so I don't think I think that's why you don't see him interviewed at all.
Was he just the third guy they brought in to make it even?
They got too lazy to hire a translator that could put subtitles on the show.
Well, he does teach that course in Los Angeles,
even though he probably has a ton of knowledge.
He is there to look good. But that brings us to the guy that they brought in to demonstrate almost every weapon for the Shaolin, and that is Alfred Singh, I believe it's pronounced. And I put that as the second most American Chinese name, Alfred.
Yeah. I'll say about Alfred, he looks very disinterested. Like when he's talking about the Shaolin, he's always like, yeah, the Shaolin, they were protectors, and they use their powers to protect people. Like he doesn't seem like he's not really having as much fun as everyone else.
I feel like that's Luke's gonna get into it. They say he's a stunt actor, and I think he is like what they say he is. Like he's a stunt actor for movies.
I think it's more the stunts than actor, because I had noticed that too. He seemed kind of disinterested, but I think he was just like kind of a bad actor, and they fed him lines, and he just like kind of just mumbled his way through.
He does. I want to say this because I think this is the one and only time this happens. He is an expert that then plays the warrior in the reenactment.
Yeah,
he plays the Shaolin monk in multiple reenactments, including the final battle we see with the Maori.
Because he does his iconic move, which we'll get to later in the reenactment. All right, Alfred, they put him as Chinese weapons expert. The weapons expert blanket term for here's an actor.
Yeah.
But I did mention earlier too, this is one of the first times the show blatantly comes out and just attributes someone to being an actor. They had 3 Maori experts. I did write this note in why I thought they brought him in. They had 3 Maori experts that were like pretty qualified, and they had 2 Shaolins that were pretty qualified. And I think they needed like a filler, someone who can come in and just be an actor essentially, which is why he's here.
Yeah.
He says he performs jaw-dropping martial arts in the movies. And I'm glad they were honest about it for once. He's appeared in Silicon Valley, Ready Player One, One Punch Man, the live action, and he does workout tapes also, which I kind of want to watch.
Nothing like a live action of an anime, right, guys?
There are a lot of stunts in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Those always live action animes.
I
Those
guess
always
he
turn
was
out good.
a just straight up actor in Silicon Valley because that was like his biggest role he's ever landed yet. There was like a big article on it.
Oh shit! I was saying he's like sitting there at his computer doing the.
He's jumping on the floor.
Yeah. Can you not do that in the scene? That's all I can do.
But here's his qualification and explains it a little bit. He has trained for 10 years in America and China in Wushu and Kung Fu. So he has like some formal training. And he's also won the first American gold medal in Wushu Talu history at the 2009 World Wushu Championships. So there's that, I guess.
Nice.
So
USA.
Good on you, Alfred. Good on you.
I want to just throw out a general question, or just like a general statement to you guys to like add on to. How surprising is it, like these experts on this episode just all being genuinely qualified this time? Isn't that crazy?
I think we're like 2 in a row now where we had Spetsnaz Green Beret had like all, like at least for what they said they were, that's what they were. And then now we have other experts all experts for this one.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm speechless.
I know.
This is a weird episode because they get, for the most part, a lot of weapons correct. They get a lot of history correct. They get a lot of like information and experts correct this time.
Get ready because next episode they bring on Kyrian Elliott as William Wallace, which is like a Xenu Games move of just bringing on your friend.
Yeah.
Like, bringing on your buddy to be on the show. So.
Happy to be here, guys.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, that's all this. It's just like all of us hanging out, just talking about this
We
show.
did book somebody who actually took the Maori course, but they couldn't make it. So we got Walsh.
All right.
His name is Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Dwayne.
We booked
Ever heard of him?
Yeah.
There was a wrestler called Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
He might have been like Samoan and Maori too.
and-
We talked about the WWE earlier. That just came to my head.
I think Walsh mentioned Roman Reigns too.
Is he?
It's like
Yeah.
a big.
I
It was that his name? I thought there was another big guy who like didn't talk in the WWE, and all he did was just like
probably.
body slam people.
I'll Google it when I have a break.
Yeah, right.
All right. So in the next part, we get the next excerpt where we get a little bit of the more history on the Shaolin monks, that they are Buddhist priests and they train at the Shaolin monastery in China, named after a nearby forest. And they
Yeah.
want to live in passive solitude, but the outside world would not leave them alone. And we were told
These damn
that
farmers and their pitchforks kept stealing their stuff.
we were told that bandits would attack the monasteries to steal the wealth they had. So to survive, the monks perfected the powerful martial arts called Kung Fu, achieving ever deadlier levels of force, and became famed for their fighting. But the Buddhist code stopped them from ever being the aggressor. They talk about Buddhism on the background. They show these monks just slaughtering and kicking the shit out of people.
They're like peasants too.
Yeah.
Matt, can you tell us a little bit about this temple that they mention, and if you have anything on this supposed Buddhist code that these monks followed, why they weren't allowed to be the aggressor?
Yeah, so I said already, like the Shaolin Monastery. The show says it's named after the forest. I read it's named after the Shoshi Mountain. There's probably a Shoshi forest. Though,
It's
too,
probably on the mountain.
You know, the forest might be named after the mountain, like whatever. But so the Shaolin monks have existed for many centuries, believing to have been established in 525 AD, with some still remaining today in modern China. Over those millennia, the temple has been destroyed and rebuilt a number of times, and it is difficult to pin down exactly what period of time Deadliest Warrior is referencing, though it has to be during a period where the Shaolin would have had steel weapons. So they are most likely referring to the Shaolin during the Chinese feudal era. So this is a time where there was a lot of warring feudal lords. They were constantly going at each other, and with war in medieval times comes a whole lot of chaos. So the idea that bandits would raid temples, because these monasteries are, they usually always have some sort of idol of Buddha in them. And even though the monks don't have the monks don't have like a ton of possessions. I mean, it's a temple, it's a religious place, so people would go there for protection. Wealth would just accumulate there, right? It's a place you can go where there's going to be food and supplies. So it did make them a target. And that is what prompted these monks to start training, because they were you can look where this monastery is. It's right in the middle of like Eastern China. So they're right in the thick of it with everything. So these guys had to train with weapons and learn how to defend themselves. And, the Buddhist, they call it the Buddhist code in the show, which is really funny because it's like saying like, it's against the Christian code. I can't eat bacon. Yeah, I can't eat bacon. I can't eat bacon because that's against the Jewish code.
It's kind of subject to change,
right? Code is such a funny way to put it, but yeah, I mean, in Buddhism they preach non-aggression and non-violence.
On paper, that does sound like they'd be a nice, easy target for some bandits. Like, oh, bruv, we can steal from these guys and they won't even fight back.
Exactly. Like, hey, these guys are a bunch of pacifists. And I did want to mention, though, I found this was cool. In 1620 AD, some wayward monks left the monastery to start a secret organization of assassins known as White Lotus. So there's a lot of things that are named. And
is that the one they reference in Avatar?
Yeah. So they bring up in Avatar, there's like I think of the White Lotus Society or whatever. Uncle Iroh is a part of it. There's a lot of like Shaolin influence in Avatar. But anyways, not the Avatar podcast.
I mean, look at it's not on the front. Yeah, look at Aang's clothes. Yeah, they're like Buddhist monk clothes.
So typically the Shaolin are taught not to be the aggressors, but the monks would have to fight in cases of self-defense and also defending others. Like I said, people going there for refuge during times of war. So the Shaolin monks train for several hours each day in hand-to-hand and weapons training. And I already mentioned that each monk is required to become proficient in all 18 of the temple's traditional weapons and a master of at least one. So, yeah, they for their fighting styles gained a reputation in China. And that is led to their reputation in the world. And that's why you see them in a lot of pop culture stuff, because they had a reputation of like, you can mess with monks, but you should not mess with the Shaolin monks because these guys will mess you up. So, yeah, they gained a reputation.
And then we move on to the twin hooks. Yeah. I do that intentionally because for some reason this show abruptly just moves on to the twin hooks before they announce any of the weapons anyone's using. They just bam, twin hooks for some reason. So we're gonna do.
I mean, they kind of have to highlight it with how well they did.
So,
well, good thing it's not an important weapon to the episode. No, so you don't need to spend a lot of time on it.
They get to it quick. They glance right over it. All right, so we will move on to the twin hooks themselves. They are 3 feet, 2 pounds each, and made of forged steel. And I want to highlight forged steel. They say that for almost every Shaolin weapon because that is the tail of the tape on this one. It is the Maori almost resembles like a Stone Age warrior versus the Shaolin monk, who is essentially like a Steel Age warrior, and they love to point it out.
Yeah, they're definitely referencing Shaolins in like a feudal era.
Yeah.
So a primitive form of steel has been around in China for like ever, since like the BC era. But it's hard to say whether the Shaolins would have had access to enough steel to make these weapons. Like, certainly all of the modern weapons are made of steel, but a lot of them might have been made of iron. I'm kind of going to just let it slide, though, because it's still an Iron Age warrior versus a
Stone Age
guy. And, I don't think there's that much of a difference when it comes to, like, I'm sure there's plenty of differences with iron and steel, but, like, for the purposes of this show and this matchup, I don't think it's a huge thing to like really gripe on.
No, I think the only significant part to look at is just the fact that there is a metal versus essentially
they did
rock.
have a forged metal weapon versus someone who's bringing like natural elements in.
How do you think they plugged that into the sim?
Yeah.
Ones and zeros.
Did Max get a custom module for it?
Well, I'm pretty sure the twin hooks got a complete custom module just to themselves.
Yeah, the twin hooks, Max put the stat for the AK-74 in for the twin hooks, I think. So.
Yeah, well, are we gonna talk about that at the end? The twin hooks, like the results. Or talk about it now?
Yeah. Maybe
we'll
let's
get to that
save
to the
let's
end.
save the
We'll save it
results for the
because
end.
I have some theories.
Yeah, we'll get to our big gripes and theories and everything about it at the end. But they bring out the twin hooks and
Legendary twin hooks.
the legendary. They once again call a pig carcass the closest thing to human flesh. Cue the eye roll from me. And we get to see Eric shred the carcass with some pretty heavy edits as he clearly got them stuck a couple times.
Yes.
And the pig, it's like all half a second edited shots, and he like gets the hook
The
stuck.
way it's edited, it looks like he was chopping at that thing for like 30 minutes.
Oh yeah. And then Max says pork chops as the pig falls in half. Armand Dorian gives his medical analysis on half a pig, saying that it was artistic. Then we are told that they can be linked to extend the reach and are given a test cutting a gel torso. And then that was
I don't
described.
understand why they switch. That was my biggest gripe with the test. Why do they always switch stuff? Do the same
Do it
be
twice. He has a
consistent.
control, like, because you can't compare. How do you compare?
Right.
They do that every episode.
Yeah,
though.
They do that for every weapon, but like it's
Yeah,
just.
they do it
like,
for
they-
every
they
weapon in
continue
every
it.
episode.
I guess that is
makes sense.
consistency in a way.
Later on, we'll see the MA go against a ballistic gel, and then the Mare, they like swing at a few bricks. Like, it makes no sense. It's like,
So he hits the gel torso with the swords linked together, and then described by Armand as filet human body.
This is filet human body.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in this week. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up the episode.
yeah, right, with the twin hooks. They are the period at the end of the sentence that is this episode.
So Matt, do they actually link these swords together? Is this a real technique used? What are these weapons?
Why don't I go into whether the twin hooks are real?
Sure, let's start there.
Because they are. And they are one of the 18 traditional Shaolin weapons. So information on the twin hooks, also known as the tiger hooks, is difficult to come by, and many believe them to be an ancient weapon. However, most artwork of them does not come around until I hope I'm saying this right, the Qing Dynasty era. I probably butchered that.
I already butchered a couple.
Qing, the Qing Dynasty era in China, which was 1644 to 1912. So it's not really known when the twin hooks showed up, but I think if we're giving this as medieval era Shaolin, it's probably legit.
I've always thought they look like Kingdom Hearts weapons.
They
Like,
do,
they don't look
yeah.
like actual
They look
weapons. They're very ornate.
So they're very theatrical, like, you know, Jet in Avatar: The Last Airbender uses them. And
Cabal from Mortal Kombat,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
uses them.
There's like, I see them pop up because of the show. I always recognize them when they pop up in like movies and stuff. So they're a weapon traditionally associated with wushu schools of martial arts, though it's not really known how much they were used in actual combat due to the high skill required to use them. And Eric even mentions in this episode that these weapons require a high skill to use, and it's true. Like, a twin hook is a lot harder to use than a sword, because it's like all edges and angles, and it's very versatile. So like, you can grip something, and
I think they say you block too.
and you can stab, and you can block. I mean, you can do all sorts of things with them. It's a lot more complicated. Shaolins are trained in like regular swords, like the short sword and the broadsword and the Dao, but twin hook's pretty cool, and the hooking it together and swinging it is a thing. They do that in actual wushu like training. I guess the question is whether this thing was actually taken into a
combat
fight or not. Hard to tell. Maybe if you were one of the guys that chose this weapon as to master, it probably gets picked for the show because it's cool.
I think it's one of those
unique and cool.
It's one of those showy things, because how many times on the show do they have a weapon where the guys,
Right,
and then they're like, okay, test it out, and he goes,
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
That was like the nunchuck test where he just
Yeah.
like hits him over the fucking
yeah.
head.
When they test this, he's like clumsily swinging it, kind of, and they do. The coolest part of it is when they do the over the head part where they hook them together. The only thing I'll add is after they do that test where they hook it and slice the ballistics gel belly, Max also inserts another funny line where he goes, "It's an ugly wound, but it's geometrically beautiful."
All right, we're gonna insert the clip of me swinging the twin hook swords now.
Yeah,
I wish.
you'll CGI that in.
And can we get a sound effect for the twin hook slicing stuff? Oh
Perfect.
no! I thought he was on the ones and twos.
He is. It's playing through his headset. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the twin hooks. They present it well. I mean, it's a complicated weapon, and there's a lot of murky history about it.
I'm sure it's a funky weapon.
But I kind of let it slide once again because they could easily give the Shaolin like a sword or something in this, and it would probably do just as well in the sim. So
we'll address it later because I know that's the elephant in the room for this episode is the twin hooks. We'll address that at the end during the results. But
let's just not say anything about it for all these guys, for everybody listening.
But opposing, they actually take the time here, and then they come back to the show, and they're like, "Oh, well, here's the weapons everyone's using this time." They like resume the show. For
it was
some
like
reason.
before even introducing the Stingray spear.
Yeah,
they cut to like commercial, and then they come back and introduce all of the weapons.
Yeah, then they
which
do
I
like
thought
the
was
proper.
so weird.
Yeah, it's almost like it was just bad editing. Like he accidentally put it on the wrong side or something.
Yeah,
but
My theory is that they had time between commercial breaks that they had to fill, so they just kind of like fixed the editing of it.
It could be for like the time slot meeting the criteria, but who knows. But we have first up for the Maori, the Stingray Spear. And it is classified as one of the Maori's special weapons. They like to classify stuff in this episode as special weapons.
Yeah, well, the reason I found is that the Maori don't have any long-range weapons. I don't know if it had to do with they thought it was like cowardly or something, but they don't even throw their spears. So
that's interesting because this is the only episode of Deadliest Warrior that I can think of that has no ranged weapons.
Yeah,
in it.
it's
like,
all close
no
quarters.
projectiles, and the Shaolin do have multiple things that they could bring as like a long range weapon, but I think they're trying to. A lot of this episode, I'll repeat this time and again, is nerfing the Shaolin so that it's. I think it could have even been a bigger beatdown than what we get.
It shows so many clips of them using those like rings and stuff.
Yup.
Or like the rope.
Yeah, the sharp
And they don't
rings,
even-
and they show in the reenactments a lot of the 18 weapons like swords and the large Chinese fork and stuff.
Yeah,
so
they have
it's
that
like that
pitchfork in the
pitchfork shaped
background
thing.
constantly.
And I'm like, man, they really tried to nerf the Shaolin here by giving him like a staff and these little like MAs, because if they had given him that stuff, I think it would have been even worse of a beatdown.
So the Stingray Spear, it's presented as 5 feet long, 2 pounds, wood with tail spikes. And I'm sorry, it kind of looks like a toy you made in the backyard as a kid.
Hey, can we talk about the funniest moment of the episode?
of the
though?
season, maybe.
Yeah, of maybe the entire season of this show.
The Maori had one killing tool. It was a simple yet deadly fusion of natural components. The Stingray Spear, tipped with barbs from the sea creature's tail.
They never do anything like that, I think, ever again.
Nope.
We'll throw a clip in of it. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a first and a last.
So we see this thing get tested on a gel dummy where the barbs go in and break off, and they kind of present this as a like one-shot weapon. And they have Armandorian pull out the barbs, and the first strike that they do, he says it's not a kill strike, but a damaging strike. Like, oh, he gives you this guy's having a bad day type explanation. And so they get a second go at it, saying that he can place them in between the dummy's ribs. And he does just that. He sticks the barbs up in between the ribs, and it's called a kill shot this time. So after that stab, Jeff Damelin goes, sick. That is sick. And I say more like stick. It's a stick. That was for me. So, is this...
Whoa, dude! Whoa, man, so cool!
So, Craig and Walsh, was this a commonly used weapon? Is it a kind of like one-use weapon? Is there anything you want to cover about this?
Can I just get my grievance relievance out of the way right now?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so the Stingray Spear should have gone against the staff, and the Taiaha should have gone against the twin hooks. It's full stop. We can continue.
Yeah. No, I agree with
I don't
that.
understand. I don't understand why they matched that up like that.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah. Do they address exactly... They say tail spikes, and they go over the barbs. What exactly is on the end? Is that supposed to be like...
Well, like the Stingray would have, I think, like a venom in it, but it's obviously dead. So it's just the pointy part.
So it's like the tail of the stingray. Is that
Yeah.
why it's named? Okay.
It's inside the tail, but yeah,
Okay.
it's like underneath it, I think.
So I think it's fair to say kind of an underwhelming weapon after watching the twin hooks test. Do you have anything you want to add about it, Craig?
So I did see one source that said that they would use it to hunt like small birds and stuff, which I
think
guess
that
makes
more
sense. Yeah, and also I think that the monk robe would probably offer some protection. Like, I know it's not considered armor, but and the Maori would be thrusting it pretty hard, but if you think of like a barb, it would probably get caught on your clothes, and I don't know if it would really like go clean through like a full-on blade would. So
That's actually interesting. I'm surprised they didn't test it with even just like clothing on.
yeah, because I don't. Well, they probably did, and they probably was like not.
Oh
good
wait,
TV.
never mind. I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I honestly think that the robe may have given some protection against this weapon. The other thing is that I forget the older Shaolin monk instructor. He says that the guy says,
Wei.
yeah, the guy says that's a kill, and the older guy says only if you can hit the Shaolin.
Yes, I was
which
going to
is
bring
the
that
classic, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit of a more minor, subdued version, but like, yeah, buddy, we get it. Which, I mean, to be fair, it's, for the monk, they are very nimble, so it's a little more fair. But like, that's not what they're testing.
We get one of those on every single episode of this show where one guy it's like, I don't know if the producer comes up with that line and gives it to somebody, or if human brains just are that much mashed potato.
That is
like
the 7th grade defense.
Yeah,
like
like-
the no you.
I mean, if you can
Yeah.
if you can hit my guy, if you can hit him,
This is the weapon I would probably agree with that statement the most, because if you don't get it
yeah,
somewhere vital, it's just a flesh wound. Like,
yeah, definitely.
and it breaks off, so it's not like you can try again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a one-hit weapon. So they give obviously the edge to the twin hooks. Is there any disagreement? I don't think so.
No, and Walsh did bring up a great point that they put like the Maori's like worst weapon up against
Yeah, the
the
best.
the Shaolin's like
the
god.
deadliest weapon in all the show.
Oh, we don't know. We haven't got to the stats yet.
Yeah, because you can. I found this with a lot of the Maori weapons. I'll get into it more with the MA piercers, I guess. But steel versus stone and like this natural stuff does offer like a pretty big advantage.
and bone. Too. That's not even like
Yeah.
rock. That's bone.
I
too.
think I'll get into it when we talk about the edge in the MA piercer test. I think that might be a little more controversial.
Fair
and,
enough.
And what I mean by that is everyone will agree with the Mare except for me.
One
yeah,
more
I
thing about the
agree.
Stingray I saw was that it was mostly used in like duels, and fatalities were very uncommon with their wounds.
You know what
Okay.
it looks like? It looks like that thing whenever you watch like Castaway and he makes like the little spear to like hunt a fish in the water.
Yeah.
Is what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, twin hooks, better weapon. No argument there.
It's an ugly wound, but it's geometrically beautiful.
Yeah.
So, we get the excerpt next that covers heavily the Maori's tattoos that they wore, or from Far Cry 3, the tattoos. Sorry, I just finished that game. Craig Walsh, can you explain essentially what were the tattoos that the Maoris wore? Because they were covered pretty extensively in them. What did they mean to the warrior?
Yeah, so one interesting thing about the tattoos is the ink was made of like I think maybe fat and some kind of earthen mineral. So, and unlike just a normal like ink tattoo that you'd get like in nowadays, they were actually grooved into the skin like records. So a little bit more of I imagine painful administering of a tattoo. So and as for what they meant, it was unique to each Maori. So without knowing the Maori and given their context, you may not know the full story. Kind of like a regular tattoo, to be honest.
Yeah, my Pickle Rick tattoo has a lot of meaning.
Yeah, that you wouldn't understand.
Spirit animal.
Yeah,
Right.
But
you need a PhD to understand it.
They gave it to me with a pickle.
yeah. But commonly, it's believed it's mainly just accomplishments. The more tattoos you have, the more courageous you are, and you kind of have to like earn the tattoo, like by watching a lot of Rick and Morty. So, so pretty much what the show said.
That's solid. Walsh, you have anything you want to add?
On the tattoos, I think it's just kind of like it kind of follows like modern day almost. Just like some people just get patterns and stuff that they enjoy, or they think looks fierce or badass. Shout out to tribal tattoos.
Yeah,
fair enough.
If I could go back to the Stingray Spear for 1 second, they had a device on it, and we never get to see what it recorded. So,
Oh yeah.
Jeff, show us the records.
Jeff, release the Stingray data. Yeah, see the Stingray cut.
Anytime they do that and they don't show us the data, I like to think that it was so like insignificant or just bad. They're like,
Jeff,
we can't put
like, what are they measuring? It's just a thing on the staff. Like,
he
I
couldn't
guess
come
acceleration.
up with anything fun to say about it. Like that was 2,000 newtons.
Wow, no way! Whoa, dude.
That Stingray Spear had 40 G's of force on it.
40 G's, the Shaolin just explodes.
This Stingray Spear was the equivalent of the dog running into you at the barbecue. So,
all right. So we get the next excerpt, which they give the Maori one, so they got to give the Shaolin. Where I think it is Alfred that says the Shaolin is called equal to 1,000 warriors.
Yeah, 1,000 soldiers.
And that their hands are as strong as steel. And and that the Shaolin did this specific training to strengthen their hands. And I think they showed them like punching like a piece of wood or something.
Punching like a post.
Is that any type of training that they actually did? Did they care about like this hand strengthening? I know that's a part of like kind of Americanized kung fu where they have this where you go to like, karate chop the piece of wood to
who knows. I mean, you're doing all sorts of strength training, and building calluses on your hand is part of fighting, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of like punching a hard object in order to toughen your hands, a lot of that stuff that you see about American martial arts where they're like breaking boards, your 2-year-old's like an orange belt or whatever, and he can snap a piece of wood in half. That's all like fake. Like if you hold a flimsy piece of wood like at a right angle, like you and I could like chop through it easily.
Let's try it.
The idea that their hands would be stronger than steel and they could break through wood and stuff is kind of like, I don't know, like you could break through wood, like you at home listening. Not you, but you at home.
Don't try it. We're not condoning you to try it.
Yeah, right. You know which ones of you can, so don't try it.
Take your brother's PS5 and go like this, break it in half.
Break it in half.
If you need to weaken it, throw it off the roof of your apartment building.
But in all seriousness, they would have had strength training. They would have built up calluses on their hands, but obviously that part is very exaggerated.
I think that's a little like Bruce Lee Hollywood movie, like his hands are as strong as steel, like a bit overboard.
Punch through a human body, with my fist. Yeah.
Do you ever see Kung Pao Enter the Fist where he punches and like a solid chunk comes out of the guy? It's kind of up that avenue.
Right, yeah.
All right, we'll move on to our next set of weapons here. The MA piercers. Is that MA? Is that it?
Sure.
All right, we'll
the
go
MA
with that.
Piercers.
They are short range. They're 1 foot each. They're under a pound, and again, they're the forged steel. And they give this. Alfred gives this demonstration where he's spinning them on his hands, and he goes, "They were used to not only attack but to distract." And then Jeff's like, "Oh yeah, you distract them here and you get them here." And then
maybe if you're like a henchman in a Hollywood movie, you'll be like,
"Whoa!" Jeff gives the line, "Oh yeah, vision is most sensitive to motion."
Yes.
as opposed to touch.
Yeah,
Was it Jurassic Park?
that was the line they used instead of whatever line they recorded for the Stingray spear, where he said like, "Oh, the 2,000 newtons on that one."
Yeah.
They decided to go with this one instead, like Jeff's pseudoscience of the day, where he goes, where he says that.
The vision is most sensitive to motion. Yeah, no shit.
It's like, yes, that's true, but what?
We then watch Alfred take these and they give him a gel torso and they put some big blatant fake eyeballs in it that you just know are going to end up outside of the dummy.
They put those in specifically just for him to poke them out.
Yeah. I mean, you know, they told him, like, make sure you poke those out.
Yeah.
And then we watch him go, like 70 times in a matter of seconds on this gel face. And then, of course, pokes his eyes out. And
But
then,
if you go to town on something, like that's not testing the weapon.
No.
You could give me a stick and I could fuck up that gel torso just like he did.
Well, I guess Alfred said in the aftermath that like behind the scenes, like everybody was kind of shitting on the MA piercers because they were calling them like sewing needles and stuff, and so Alfred took it like personally, and he's like, I'm going to show people what these can do. You know.
well, he did a number, and then this is met with Max saying, "Fuck, man. What the fuck was that?" But they bleep it, and it sounds funnier bleeped. Like, I almost want to bleep myself so it sounds funny.
Man. Yeah. What's that?
And then, for some reason, this is something weird that happens. My suspicion is Armandorian got called for something much more important than Deadliest Warrior. They have Max take over as, like, the medical guy. He comes over. Oh, yeah, you see right here, this is where the first one went in.
Yeah.
Max, arguably the least qualified person.
Even Jeff's a former EMT.
Yeah, like they have Max, the computer whiz, come over and give like the medical analysis for some reason. And Armand Dorian's like nowhere
To be
around.
fair, though, let's be real, guys. They do not need Armand on this show. The idea that you need like an ER surgeon to tell like who's winning in whether this weapon would kill someone or not. How many times do we riff on the fact that like the ballistic gel will get its head cut off and Armand will come over and be like, "That's a kill.
That's a kill shot."
Easiest paycheck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Max Geiger probably could do that job.
I just thought it was funny because he is arguably the least qualified person there to give the medical analysis.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, right here and right here," and we'll see that actually happen a couple more times this episode. And I think it's probably just Armand had something better to do.
He was. They switched places. He was building the custom modules.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Matt, is there any info you have on these piercers? And I had a kind of a question. They say that they would conceal them in their sleeves. Are these like more of a stealth weapon, or what are these essentially?
Yeah, so they're also known as Amisi or MA daggers. Once again, the only place I saw calling them MA piercers was Deadliest Warrior.
Deadliest Wiki.
These are small concealable weapons that are used in wushu today, and they are designed to distract with the spinning before delivering a strike. And they're designed as like hidden daggers. Like you can, they're attached to a ring that the ring then goes over your finger, and that's how it's able to spin on the ring. So this is something you can take with you that you can keep hidden. It is not one of the 18 traditional weapons of the Shaolin monk. So I found that interesting. I think it just goes into, this is a cool weapon to put on a TV show because it's spinning and, you know.
It's kind of like the nunchucks in a way.
Exactly. And it does apply to wushu, so these guys did know how to use it. There's probably other more accurate stuff they could use. It's named after Mount Ma, so another thing named after a mountain, their place of origin. I wrote that Alfred absolutely destroys this target and starts by popping out the eyeballs. Good stuff.
Oh, yes. We have a pretty bad storm going on in the background.
Yeah, there is. It's like the apocalypse out. But I tell you what, if this is how it's got to end, boys, I'm glad we're doing it talking about Deadliest Warrior. Talking about an unconsequential Deadliest Warrior episode.
So, after this test wraps up, Sala, the Maori expert, he's walking around. He does this constantly throughout the episode where he just kind of walks around menacingly in the background. Yeah. And then he walks up and says, "I have something that can do that in half the time." And one of my favorite moments, Alfred goes, "What would that be?"
Yeah.
That's what I was.
So
I wrote that down.
He's like,
Seconds, and that's not even counting the 2 spear shots to the palate.
Nice, boys. Very nice. Unfortunately, we have a weapon that does twice as much in half the time.
What weapon would that be?
You think that's another case? Like Walsh mentioned earlier, how Alfred's more stunt than actor. Do you think that's a case of like the producer giving him that line and Alfred like fucked it up?
I think that
Maybe
was the
not
most
even the
genuine
producer.
line.
Maybe it's just him reacting to it in the moment and just has no clue what to say.
Or is he just like so terrified? He's
just so cringy.
He's looking at Sauron in the
Yeah.
face.
He's like, that guy was Sauron?
Yeah, and he's trembling at Sauron's presence.
I think that was the most legit line, the most real line, where I got something that could do that in half the time. What? And that, of course, is the mare. Is that it? Mare? Is that how you say it?
Mare.
The mare.
And that is the short range, 1 foot, 2 pound. It's kind of essentially like a little jade rock that they kind of use it like a knife or like a blunt object. And we see they bring it out and we see Sala. They bring out like a deer skull and have them just essentially shatter this thing, saying that it's stronger than bone.
You could probably do that with your fucking hand.
Yeah,
like
it's
the
like
way
all dried out.
Yeah, the way that dried up bone is like propped
Found
up
in the
there.
desert.
You could probably just do that with your fists.
And then so we get that where it's this just 2 pound piece of like jade, or I think I wrote nephrite they even use for it. And they're like, oh, well, we need to see if it's stronger than steel because that's what you're going up against. So sure, they do this second test where they set up 4 bricks and they bring out just like a standard steel Bowie knife, it looks like, which is kind of a strange test because Bowie knives, they have some weight, but they don't have a lot of weight. And they use it and they break one of the bricks.
Do you think that this is the same Bowie knife that's going to appear in the Jesse James episode of season 2?
Probably.
In the infamous Bowie knife versus stiletto.
Probably. It's either that or it's from a flea market.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So then they set up 4 more bricks and then they use the mare and it hits through 3 of the bricks, determining that it is stronger than steel, even though it's jade and nephrite.
Right.
I think this is just a case of it weighed more because you can like drop a brick on the ground and it'll break. Or, I mean, it just takes weight essentially.
I mean,
to
they're
break
trying
a
to
brick.
use a knife to like jab through bricks and they're like, steel's not that impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Craig and Walsh, do you think this is a good test for the weapon? Do you think it was used properly on the show? And what exactly was this weapon that the Maoris used, if they used it? Was it like a knife or was it more of a blunt object?
So it has an edge to it. From I think Sala or one of them mentions that he could stab it in and pop your skull off. And from what I read, that is how it was mainly used, in a more jabbing than a slashing type of motion. And that they would get my video. They would jab it, and then they would like twist their wrist, and it would pop the skull open.
I almost want to say
it
looks like they used a bad stand-in model for it, maybe. Like I feel
maybe.
like the real.
I don't know why they don't test against like a gel torso after he says that, but
Yeah.
I guess I do now.
Yeah.
Well, let's say real quick.
I also.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was like, this weapon always confused me as a kid, and I realized why. Because it looks rounded like a club, but all the sound effects are slashing and cutting.
Yeah.
So that's my brain didn't like rectify those, and I was like, "What is this? Is this a knife?" Or
That's
is
what
this
I
a
couldn't
club?
decide. I was like,
Yeah.
is this a blunt object or is this supposed to be a stabbing object?
Yeah.
Best of both worlds. But I also read, which was interesting, that people wielding it would often use a small pad or shield in their offhand. But that might have boosted it a bit in the sim. You never know. Too many custom modules.
Yeah, like textbook. If it's a blunt weapon, all you have to do is put a pressure mat, and then you get the. And then you get the
40
force.
Gs.
40 Gs.
Yeah, the force. Just like I imagine, in Skyrim, whenever you go up against the giant,
When the giant hits you in Skyrim and you go ragdolling into like outer space.
yeah,
That's the Shaolin in the sim.
yeah.
The club's also very ceremonial. You see lots of people posing with it, even up to like this day. It's you can instantly identify it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw similar stuff where, yeah, I mentioned before Jade was thought to have its own mana. It was given as gifts, to solidify deals as Jade in general. One of the questions I researched is how strong Jade is. I think on whatever the mineral scale is that they used, it was a long name. I didn't write it down. It was like a 6 or a 7, which is pretty good. So that's obviously a big part of these weapons. And interesting thing about Jade, and I think the Mare also, is this was the type of weapon where like they have a very strange burial ritual where somebody will die and they get buried with all their stuff, including their Mare. But then they get exhumed, and then they pick off all the flesh from their skeleton and then bury them again. And in between there, people will like take their Mare. So kind of weird, but they sort of get buried with it, and then someone takes it.
Interesting.
So the edge is given to the Mary itself. Does anyone have any objection to this? Anyone strongly agree with this over the two weapons?
It's cooler.
Matt?
I would say I would definitely argue that the MA Piercer should have gotten the edge over the Mare Club. I think the Mare has the same issue for me that all of the Maori weapons have. And of course, a couple of the Shaolin weapons are like non-lethal as well, but a lot of the Maori weapons, I think they can hurt you and they can kill you with multiple blows, but like not everywhere is a kill shot. You get hit in the arm with like the Mare Club, like I think you're going to be fine.
But it could have
maybe
a razor edge too.
Yeah, fine's not the right word, but I just think like the MA daggers are piercing objects and they're very long. Like I don't know, I guess they say they're like a foot in length, so each side is probably 6 inches.
Yeah, that's like a nice
if you
blade.
stab somebody, I'm just thinking like they do the test on the head, but even if you can like stab somebody in like the torso areas or something, it's a deep puncture wound that you're then like pulling out, and that's going to cause like a lot of bleeding. And hey, I know that the Mare can kill. I'm not saying that. It's just one is like a steel piercing weapon that I think would be a lot better at poking holes and causing a lot of bleeding. And the Mare is the sort of, it's got to connect on like the head or something, I feel like, to get an instant kill.
You might be able to break some ribs or something with it, but yeah. I agree.
I'd
agree with that.
How many bricks did the MAs break?
Right, yeah, no,
that's the real.
That's
Are
true.
they stronger than steel?
Yeah, I wrote here that
is it even stronger than stuff?
I thought
that's a pretty good. Like they used a pretty good stand-in model, I guess, for it. I was seeing if it looked different in real life than like what they portray.
I just want to say that the only other thing I had written down here was that the Mare test is stupid, and I would have liked to see a Mare tested on a ballistic gel.
Would have made sense.
It would have been cool because I bet you that would have eviscerated like the skull, and then I wouldn't be here bitching about it. You know?
Yeah, I'll say. Like at the end of the day, it's 2 pounds, and even if it is like it's got an edge on it, but even if it is like a heavy, I mean, 2 pounds is enough to. Probably do some damage.
Definitely. I'm not questioning.
Well, he's got brute strength too, so
yeah. Right, yeah.
He's like 7 foot tall.
Yeah. You can take my arm off. I'll still get to you.
Anyone else have any opinions on the Mare getting the edge before we move on?
I agree with it. To be honest, I think
Me too.
that like. I think that it's with the two warriors that we have. I guess I'm still imagining a gigantic Maori warrior as opposed to like, a normal person.
Cartman's anime character in that one episode of South Park.
Yeah. So I think in that scenario, you could maybe do more damage for an unarmored little monk. Hitting him over the head, I think would be pretty devastating. And you're getting within range. I wonder what the reach would be. That would be curious for this matchup, is seeing what the reach is. Given their height, probably similar.
Probably similar reach. Yeah.
But so I would agree with it, but it's a soft agree. I mean, I could see it going either way.
I have a question for Walsh. Would the Maori warrior stand still while the monk hit him?
I think he would just to show his intimidation. Like he's not
Well, you're talking about moving to the side. I'm talking about moving around. Around.
Yeah, I will say too. With what's it called? I lost my train of thought.
The Mary?
No, the Yami piercers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to put it in the edit. So Craig, whenever you edit this, I think there's a moment when they're about to announce the Yami piercers, and you see the kill shot into the sim.
Yeah,
like it's they're fighting, and it's the monk stabbing the Maori at the end of the sim.
Yeah, in the temple.
So like they blew their load.
Oh,
Yeah.
spoiler!
They didn't have any other footage they could use.
Now, what troll edited that in?
All right, let's keep
I
down.
kind of agree with what Matt said about it. Like, you could probably do more damage with the stabbing, but if the Mary had a shield too, that might turn the tide on.
Yeah,
I can agree with that.
Let's continue down this road of exciting weapons that isn't offset by the twin hooks at all. So next up for the Shaolin, we got probably the most iconic. Every time you think of a Shaolin monk, you think of him holding, what is it? The staff.
Yeah.
And it is rated as mid-range like every freaking weapon on this episode. It is 5 feet, and something that I thought was kind of crazy, which makes sense because it's waxwood, it's rated at 1 pound. For a 5-foot staff to be 1 pound, that is a really, really light wood. And you can see it's a very flexible wood as well. So we get to see Alfred in his element, dancing around with the staff, going... spinning it at light speed.
Yeah.
It's
like a helicopter.
We talk about the staff and give it a lot of shit. I did not want to get him swinging that.
Oh no,
thing. That was so fucking.
That would hurt.
quick.
Can you imagine, like, accidentally getting in there? But we are told that the Shaolin monks would test their ability with the staff commonly with clay pots. So they hung a bunch of clay pots from the ceiling, and then they have Alfred, going a lot less showy this time, go like smack one on the ground and just give a little demonstration. I get it that they're trying to relate this test to the Shaolin monks as how they would train with it. I don't get how clay pots relates to, hitting a Maori with the staff.
It looks cool, and the show's about looking cool.
Yeah.
That's
Matt,
it. Yeah.
Did you see anything about this clay pot test? And if not, is this weapon considered a lethal weapon? Like, what exactly was the staff used for? Did they carry it with them everywhere? What was it?
So the staff was used a lot by the Shaolin, and it's rightfully like their iconic. I don't even want to call it a weapon because they view it more as like a multi-purpose tool, really. So it functions as a tool for utility purposes, and it also functions as a tool for practicing your martial arts. So it's a piece,
martial arts.
Yeah, my martial arts. No, martial arts, like you can practicing hand motions and getting agility with a small like blunt object versus like spinning like a sword around or something like that. But it is also a defensive weapon. And monks very often, almost always traveled with one. Even if they weren't bringing like a lethal weapon, because they usually did not carry like weapons with them wherever they went. Monks didn't have like swords and knives on them.
I feel like that's where we get
they did carry the staff.
I feel like it's where we get the picture of like the Shaolin monk whenever you think of them, because that's probably the only time they were seen in public is when they were carrying the staff. Yeah, they're not going to walk around with twin hooks on their side and
yeah. And all I had to say here was that I didn't see anything about the clay pots. I guess I didn't look into it because I forgot about the test or whatever.
They glance over it anyway.
I wrote that a monk's skill with this weapon would likely be unmatched. However, it's not designed to be a lethal weapon. It's designed as something that you can defend yourself with. Like Craig said, taking a hit to the face with going at high speed and being like, ouch, and like leaving the monk alone, right? Being like, all right, I'm going to get out of here. That's what it's designed for. I don't hate that they put it in the episode because it is kind of an iconic monk weapon, but I find it interesting how many kills it gets in the sim. We could talk about that later. But yeah, it's not really designed as something that's lethal necessarily, unlike the weapon it goes up against here, the Taiaha, which I think is specifically designed to kill.
Yeah. Well, I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
Did they have secret flying devices in them like Aang did on his?
Right, yeah, a paraglider like attached to it. Only if you were an airbender.
Oh,
and could generate air at any point.
So the Maori counterpart that goes against this is, we mentioned, the Taiaha, and is a mid-range like everything else. It is 5 feet, 1.5 pounds, carved wood, which is also that's a pretty, like I said with the staff too. That's still a really light wood that they're using for this, and it's made with carved wood and nephrite jade. I think I mentioned that earlier with the Mare. I said nephrite and jade. I guess that is that a type of jade, nephrite jade? We'll go with that.
I don't know. My wife's a geologist, but she's not home right now, so
we'll go with that then. We are told it is carved after an ancestor and is a sacred weapon, and then nothing better to do with a sacred weapon than hit it against a Dick's Sporting Goods dummy, proving that it hits hard. They smack the little thing with it. I don't remember if they give us the data from it.
They did.
It's 200 psi.
200.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he shows on the little diagram, and Jeff's like, it's like almost the outline of the Taiaha on there. He's showing the little, like, the same graphs they put on Max Geiger's like loading screen there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we of course get a second test against a cow spine. That's 3 times the thickness of a human spine. Okay.
Well, see, that doesn't add up because the Shaolin monk's 1,000 men.
Right.
So
it's like, is Alfred saying like one at a time or all at once? Because I don't think either's true. Probably you get tired by guy 100, right? Like,
yeah, I always get tired of guy 100. But not me.
You fight like 90 dudes, and then you're like, all right, bring out number 91. Fuck. He just keeps doing this.
Here's my favorite part of this test. They go, stripped of muscle. For some reason, they strip it of muscle, because human spines. Humans are just 100% spine with no muscle and no cartilage.
He's like fighting Jack Skellington.
For whatever reason, they strip it of muscle to give it an accurate test. And, he swings it. And I'm not impressed by this test. It breaks in between 2 vertebrae. If you clean a spine down to where it's hanging, in between 2 spines is just like a little cartilagey type thing. If you break in between there, I mean, I could probably like punch the thing and break it there.
Yeah, it's suspended on both ends, so it's just like already being pulled apart.
Yeah, they have it taut, and it's just, this is my like grievance to relievance myself for this. I just think this is a really bad test.
Yeah, it was super like just an unimpressive task.
Yeah,
like,
they ran out of ballistic gels.
They keep doing the Maori such dirty in this episode.
Yeah, it could be a really cool weapon, but honestly, we'll never know. But Craig Walsh, what is the ancestor aspect of this weapon? Why was this significant? It seems like everything that the Maoris have and do just kind of is all about their ancestors, and carrying them with you. Why? What is that all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just part of the warrior culture, and it's like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's self-explanatory, but it's a big part of who they are, and paying
just
respect
values.
to and the values.
The monks have different values, but they hold them the same.
Yeah, basically. So, yeah, it's just that they honor their ancestors, and that's a big part of who they are, and like the afterlife and stuff. So I honestly didn't find it too much that was unique or surprising. It's kind of what you'd expect.
Yeah, they're kind of a really strange culture, and there was almost like a little bit of mystery to them for me, where there wasn't. Did you guys find like a lot of information?
No, there's just mystery in general because of, like, they don't have a lot of documented history.
The only thing I could really find about them is that they really pay tribute to their ancestors, and they have this like possible cannibalism and stuff. There's not really much beyond like what the show gives us.
Did they have like a spear end on it? Like
yeah,
they show
did.
in the show that it has a spear end.
That's the jade.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the nephrite jade.
Yeah.
That's the end. It's kind of just like the little topper for it, which it's similar to the mare, just on a stick, essentially.
Okay.
it
I
seems
did
like.
see that it's part of like the national coat of arms in New Zealand or something.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. It's used in. It's still used today in ceremonies.
Yeah, so it's like their go-to spear that you most often see them with.
So that would be like their main weapon.
In Hobbs and Shaw, when they go to Samoa, does The Rock fight mercenaries with a Taiaha, maybe? I don't know. Look into that, guys.
I didn't see the movie.
I think Armand Dorian says it the best. Armand Dorian in the staff test, after he breaks the pots, he says, "All right, what do we get from this?" And I think that could be attributed to both tests here. What do we get from either of these tests?
Yeah, this is a big question.
This is just kind of the weapons tests kind of get worse as we go on this one.
Yeah.
They give the edge to the Taiaha. Sure. Anyone have anything significant to say between the two weapons?
I just said this matchup was basically just made to favor the Taiaha.
Yeah.
Back to my grievance for allegiance. It shouldn't have been matched up in the first place.
Yeah. It appears that like the Taiaha is designed to be lethal, whereas the staff is designed not to. So I would give the edge to the Taiaha.
Makes sense.
As Jeff said, that's not what this game is about.
So move on to our. I believe these are the last weapons here. We have the the whip chain, which is classified as the Shaolin's special weapon. It is 4 feet, 1 pound, forged steel again in sections. And then, yet again, here's our boy Alfred demonstrating a weapon and just whipping it around, and he does my favorite move.
Yeah.
The one that he repeats in the simulation. He lays flat on his back and does this weird jump rope thing where he slides it underneath him and he like jumps on his back like a board.
He's like twirling it under his back while he's like thrusting himself off the ground. It's like something that shows you have a lot of like, that would be something that would be great
Core
for
strength, maybe.
Well, something like that I think shows off like the martial arts aspect of wushu, where that would be something you could see, okay, demonstrate to us what you can do with a chain whip, right?
Yeah.
And you go out there and you're doing all these trying to make it go as fast as you can, and then you're twirling with it. Completely like irrelevant to an actual like combat situation, probably. It just looks cool. And it's something that Alfred's probably had to do to earn his like black belt or whatever. So, yeah.
Let me just say, this weapon, I'm gonna categorize this with the nunchucks in my category of it just looks like it would smack the shit out of your balls by accident. Like you'd be like,
yeah. I can go into it a little bit if you want.
I'll just go over the test real quick. They tested on their favorite, the blood balls, which he swings it around just kind of, half-assedly compared to what he was doing before. And he breaks 3 of them and then breaks the last 2. And they go, dang, that's accurate.
Hey, you can't forget, though, at the beginning of that test where Max brings the wushu guys over and he goes, he says something like, it's either Max or, I think it's Max, is like, oh, we got our balls set up for you to swing. You guys can swing at my balls.
Yeah, I think he says my balls or something.
Yeah, Craig can insert the actual clip because it's pretty funny.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
We've rigged up my balls for you guys to take a crack at.
Yeah, well, he's going to be breaking those balls with the 9-section whip chain.
But, and then Alfred's like, oh, well, he's going to be busting those balls in a second.
But see, Max is clear doing innuendo. Alfred's like dead serious.
Yeah,
it's like,
right. It's like, did Alfred get the joke?
He's not picking up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead. What is exactly the whip chain? Is that its real name?
Whip chain whip. You know what it's all about.
And like what is it used for?
It's a rap record. The chain whip. So, chain whip is in its name, people. It's designed as a whip. And I don't know why they call it the whip chain. So it's designed as a whip, but instead of being made out of leather or rawhide like a traditional whip we usually see, it's made out of segmented chains. So it can have a variety number of segments. There's like 2 styles. One is like 7 segments, the other's like 9. But there is no one particular way to construct a chain whip. I thought that was interesting. It is very hard to control, and it requires a lot of skill.
And a cup.
Much like the staff, this is not something that's intended to be lethal. Just like a traditional whip, right, is not intended to be lethal. You don't see knights walking into battle with whips, just being like, "Wah!" Because it's not a lethal weapon in the way that like a sword is. It takes an incredible amount of training. So it's like people point out how this is it falls into the same problematic category as like the flail, where it's hard to control. And on Pirate Night, we talked about why flails probably weren't used all that much in actual combat. This adds another step of difficulty in that it's not just like a chain weapon, but it's in different sections that are moving independently of their own motion. So like really easy to, yes, hit yourself in the balls with, right? And for all the trouble that it's worth, for all the technique that it takes to demonstrate something like this or to use it, it's not a practical weapon. Again, I think this is part of just nerfing the Shaolin and giving him something cool, as opposed to something practical like a sword that would make the fight a little more one-sided than it even is.
They let Alfred show off, though.
Yeah, it lets people show off. It looks cool whipping around. So I will note they do show a different Shaolin weapon in the reenactment. So they show the chain whip, but they also show something called the meteor hammer, which is a solid ball attached to a short rope or chain that can be swung or thrown at a target. I thought that would be something cooler than the chain whip, or at least something more lethal that could still demonstrate like a swinging aspect. But I guess because you can throw it, they didn't want to make it unfair to the Maori. There's also an extremely funny clip with the meteor hammer in the middle of the episode where the Shaolin are walking across a bridge and there's like a group of bandits harassing a group of peasants, and the bandits turn around and look at the Shaolin are standing there, and all of a sudden one of them just goes and like a meteor hammer comes flying out and just smacks a guy right in the face. He's like, oh.
They're given a monologue over that too about how they're passive and they can't. That's when they're saying they can't be the aggressors, and he throws and hits this guy in the face with a rock.
Yeah. So not much more to say about the chain whip, and takes an incredible amount of skill to use, and it's very impressive when you're demonstrating and trying to get your points as like a master or proficient at a particular weapon. But as far as practical uses, I don't even know if the chain whip would be lethal necessarily. You know what I mean? Like any of these weapons are lethal if it's done over and over again, but chain whip's just not very practical. Like I think the one expert, I forget the Maori expert's name, the one who's got too many qualifications, right?
Oh, Jared.
Yeah, Jared. How do I forget it?
Yeah, I think that's his name.
That complicated Islander name. Yeah, Jared even mentions like, well, you get one swing with that, and then when I close the distance, like it's useless. And I am inclined to agree with him. Like,
it makes sense there.
Like
it takes a while to like start up.
It would probably smack you in the face and hurt really bad, but you could definitely like, that would be something that you would close on that guy at that point, and then take your melee and just take a big grand slam swing at his little noggin.
Yeah.
It looks like they could do that move where they like kick the end at you too, but I don't even know if that would be enough force to like.
So again, they do that again with like the meteor hammer, and the reason I
but
brought up,
it looks like you could do it with the whip chain too. Maybe I don't know how it really works, but I don't know if it would even generate enough force.
The reason I brought up that weapon in particular is because that's something that the Shaolin actually used. So like a chain,
it was in the Sin too.
A chain whip is not a like temple weapon. So like
a farming tool, honestly.
So like the two that are the Shaolin temple weapons are twin hooks, and that are shown on this episode are the twin hooks and the staff. And we see a lot of other ones in like the little reenactment clips they have. We see a Dao at some point. We see a Jian, I think, like the short sword, and we see a Chinese fork. But the MA piercers are wushu weapons, and so is the chain whip, but they're not really necessarily Shaolin weapons per se.
Yeah. So what do they have to counteract that? The Maoris bring the Shark Tooth Club.
I like that they were like, okay, what's similar?
Yeah.
They couldn't find anything. Like, fuck it.
I'm just surprised they didn't give him like a sling. This is the Maoris' second special weapon that they classify
Give 'em
as
a sling that throws jade.
yeah,
Like
probably
jade rocks.
much better. This is 20 inches, 2 pounds, wood, cord, and shark teeth. And then they bring this out, and we are shown a test against a massive piece of beef, which Sala brings it out and smacks this beef like over and over again.
Yeah,
leaving
like the MI piercers. He just goes at it.
Yeah. He leaves some nice deep cuts, some pretty solid, and breaks off some teeth from the weapon. I think this would have been a prime opportunity to use like a gel torso. And they use this big hunk of beef for some reason with these like shark teeth. They're really sharp, but just going up against this big thing of beef, it's kind of
how
a
many
crappy
children
test.
could have been fed with that beef?
Yeah. And then Max again takes Armand Doran's position as the trauma doctor for some reason.
Yeah.
Comes over to, you see this? This was here.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man. Good
Yeah.
What? Whoa! Whoa,
Max, what
man.
part of the cow was that? Can you tell us? Like,
Yeah,
what,
right.
this was the subclavian plexus.
So Craig and Walsh, before our power goes out from this storm that
Right, yeah.
Oh, no.
We've held strong here so far.
Can you tell me anything about this Shark Tooth Club? It kind of looks ridiculous, honestly. And then kind of a follow-up question you could fill in. Is there any Maori weapons that weren't covered in this episode that you feel would have been a better fit that you saw? Was there anything they didn't use? Was there anything that should have been used?
Well, like to start is like they said it was the Polynesian early day chainsaw. That's how Sala described it. I mean, what does that mean?
Right.
We'll just glance over that. Sala also says he'll tear your limb off with it. I'm inclined to disagree with him on that. I mean, it is a big hunk of beef, but I wasn't really impressed with the damage.
He even says to Alfred, like, one swing and I could take your head off with
Yeah,
it. And
it's like,
Alfred,
it's not that
kind of
sharp,
gives
dude.
him like a skeptical look. He's like, but he doesn't feel like arguing with the giant man. So
It doesn't look like a real weapon to me.
Yeah.
Like, it looks,
Well, that's what Maui has, or Maui has in Moana. I think he has a shark tooth club.
is it?
Hey,
It just
careful
seems
with
like
the
such an
Disney talk.
obscure.
you're welcome. I won't say it in the tone so they don't
They don't-
copyright
yeah,
us. You
Don't
know?
get us. Yeah, they're always copyrighting.
Yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda, if we get copyrighted, I'm coming for your ass on Twitter, okay? Not having it.
Oh, anyway, yeah, I don't know. I didn't see a lot. I just saw they prefer tiger shark teeth. That is about it. I think.
Oh,
saw
I did see how they said to harvest it they would sometimes use the body of an enemy to lure the shark in and then
Oh,
hunt
that's
the
cool.
shark.
Huh.
That's pretty cool.
I was wondering how they get them.
Yeah. Well, it was that or like they could use like pork meat and stuff too, you know, like I also read that it's supposedly only used by chiefs. Although I think I also read that the Taiaha was also like that. So I mean, I don't really know what the Maori actually fought with if only the chiefs could have weapons.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And as for your second question, I don't know if there's anything I'd really put in. This kind of covers most of the Maori bases in terms of their iconic weapons. Nothing I really saw that maybe I would add in. I mean, they're kind of at a disadvantage because they don't, I guess, believe in ranged weapons.
Yeah.
So that kind of X's that out, and you know, I think they covered it. My limited Maori knowledge, I think they did okay in terms of the weapon.
Yeah, I could have split that into like 2 questions. The only thing is because sometimes we have that case where there's like a weapon that was like, oh, they use this extensively, but they don't even address it in the show. I was just curious if like the Maoris had anything else.
They may
but-
have used like different versions of jade on their weapons, but I didn't really find anything.
The other thing I would expect is maybe like a spear with a jade head, like just like a regular spear with kind of like.
They probably
had
had that kind of stuff.
It's sort of, maybe there's different versions of the Taiaha that is like it's still a Taiaha, but it's
Taiaha comes off as like a very custom weapon too.
Yeah.
Like in nature, almost like you would design it yourself, right? So
maybe we'll do something custom.
maybe we can do something custom.
I mean, at the end of the day, it
Custom
really
modules.
seems like these are kind of like untouched island warriors that they just make something out of whatever they have. Like they just happen, like, they have jade near them, so they use that, and they kind of, worship this stone, and that's what they use in their weapons because it's a good commodity. And they get these shark teeth because I could almost see, I have no idea what I'm talking about for the record, so don't. But I could almost see like, oh, the shark is like, like this big predator, and if we kill this predator and use its teeth, like it's a cool weapon, this is a badass weapon, like almost like a trophy. So, I mean, some of their weapons make sense, but they give the edge to the shark tooth club over the whip chain. It is
Whip cream, ready whip. Yeah.
Any major gripes, agreement, disagreement with this edge?
No.
Would you rather have someone coming at you with a shark tooth club or a fucking whipped cream chain?
Yeah, right. Whipped cream.
Yeah.
I guess it depends. Is it a big New Zealand man, or is it a perfectly sized New Zealand lady?
Let's be level. We're at the bottom of the barrel for the weapons at this point.
Yeah, both these tests were like super lazy too. They're like, smack this beef.
Yeah.
And then with the whip chain, they test it for like 2 seconds. It's like, and they break those balls open, those glass balls. It's like, what is that testing at all?
Nothing. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the shark tooth club versus. Greg, can I borrow your glasses? I can't. I can't see.
We commit to the bit on this podcast.
I have a high prescription.
Whip chain. All right, let's move on to let's get to the results here. The big elephant in the room. What happened during this simulation? Well, to start off, they bring out Alfred for the simulation, where he gets to stand in as the Shaolin, and he does his iconic move where he lays on his back and does
in a fight
to the death.
In the middle of a fight to the death. He's like, this is all I know how to do.
We get about 300 during the fight, and we got our final numbers. The Shaolin is the victor. Why? The twin hooks.
in the biggest beatdown of season 1.
Oh, yes. Let me read you off the stats here.
Third biggest beatdown of all time. I don't include season 3 because the stats are weird or whatever, but third biggest beatdown of all time on this show. Biggest beatdown of season 1.
Oh, yeah. So we have the twin hooks at 566 kills. Do the math. That's more than half. The MA piercers at 31. The staff at 57. The whip chain at 38. That won't get old.
Yes, I will.
With the Shaolin bringing the total to 692 kills. That is over 500. Then we have the Maori with the Stingray Spear with an abysmal 6. We have the Mare at 78. We have the Taiaha.
The Taiaha.
Taiaha, that's what it is, at 151. And we have the Shark Tooth Club at 73, bringing the Maori total to 308. What a significant beatdown.
A difference of 384 kills.
A difference between steel and bone.
Yeah.
And wood.
Yep.
Well, since I teased it, I want to give my theory as to what happened with the twin hooks. So, two main points I want to make here. One, I'm going to make a comparison to fantasy football, which I'm doing for my first time this year. You gave me a good piece of advice. I think you said that running backs are a good person to draft early because they can get you a lot of points and a lot of, in a lot of good ways.
It's good advice for everybody out there.
Yeah, shout out. Check out
First Time Fantasy.
Yeah, check it out.
The First Time Fantasy podcast.
Yeah.
Our friends over there are on there. Me and Luke are going to be on an episode of that.
Yeah, we were just recorded the other day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But so in the same way a running back may not make the difference in an actual NFL game the way that they would in fantasy, the twin hooks, I think, just fulfilled whatever needs the sim had. So whatever stats Max put in, maybe they were completely accurate, but whatever the sim is looking for to determine a deadly warrior, the twin hooks just so happen to really nail those rules for the sim. There's a reason why twin hooks are incredibly niche and you don't really see them that much before or since this episode, because like they may have their uses, but like it's not like the deadliest thing like ever, like the show kind of presents it as. So I just think that whatever stats that they put in for the sim, it just hit those niches. And the last thing I want to say is I think this episode is almost like undebatable proof that the sim is real. Because why would a human ever put this like some kind of rounding error? How would a human ever put in, okay, these twin hooks that no one's probably ever heard of get well over the amount of kills needed single-handedly to win the entire match.
And the weapon they're matched up against gets 6.
Yeah. So I just think this is your evidence it's real.
I want to piggyback off of that. You're going to a high school game. It's like 2 high school football teams, and you're like, oh, okay. And for some reason, the twin hooks, Christian McCaffrey comes as the starter. As the starter.
It's like when one high school team has a player that's going to be a future NFL player, and everybody's like, keep an eye out for that star player, and he just runs like roughshod over the entire other team. Like, fun fact, I got to watch Nyheim Hines plays for the Colts now, and I got to watch him play in high school at Millbrook in North Carolina, and then I got to watch him play at NC State, and he's like a mediocre kind of running back in the NFL. He's mostly for like special plays or whatever. But sorry, Naeem, I didn't mean to shit on you there. Same alma mater.
We're trying to get him on the pod.
Same alma mater. Don't hate on me.
Come on the podcast.
But
you're burning bridges.
I remember going there and just watching Millbrook just absolutely destroy Broughton High School because they just gave the ball to Nyheim Hines on every play, and everybody was like, you gotta watch out for this Nyheim Hines kid. And sure enough, like they just hand it to him on every play, and it's like, there he goes on another. I think it was like 7 touchdowns, like,
Jeez.
and then Broughton got like 3 points or something. So, but I'm over on like the Broughton bench, just being like, yeah, kick his ass, Nyheim.
All right, so we're getting down here. I'm going to give my thesis here at the end. Does anyone we're going to go around here, any final thoughts about this episode? Anything they could have done different? Anything? We'll start over, Matt, and we'll come around here, and then I'll give my final thesis here before we wrap up.
I would like to add for the record, I didn't go to Broughton High School. I was there. My family member went there, so don't worry about that. But, yeah, this is the biggest beatdown of season 1. I think it makes complete sense, honestly. The Shaolins are highly trained fighters, and they're fighting with steel weapons. You can argue that the twin hooks are niche, but I would say that the only warrior that could possibly, like, the 0.1% of the Earth's population that might be able to use them is in this episode. And I think the beatdown could have been even worse. If I'm being honest, like if they had taken out like the staff and the whip chain and stuff and given the Shaolin like some swords or something else, I think I'll say this for the Maori. A very cool warrior and a very unique warrior on this show. I think the Maori is bringing like some extremely unique weapons. Like it's not just a sword or something similar to what another warrior has. Like they're all individually unique weapons. Like you never see anything like the shark tooth club or the stingray spear on here again. It's pretty cool. And I think the Maori would probably fare better against another Stone Age warrior. I think this is just a matter of putting a guy who's fighting with stones and sticks and the natural elements he has available to him against a guy who has a forged like steel weapon. And I think they tried to nerf the Shaolin. That's why the Maori gets 3 edges against the Shaolin, except in the one that counts, because the one lethal weapon they gave the Shaolin, it's like that gets all the kills. Just a couple fun bits of trivia I wanted to add in my closing statement here is that the twin hooks are the only weapon on the show to ever deliver the warrior a win single-handedly. The Tommy gun comes close. Comes close at $4.99, but twin hooks are the only one to deliver one single-handedly. Second fun piece of trivia, I found this on Wikipedia, honestly. The Maori is only one of 3 warriors in the entire show to get 3 out of 4 weapons edge. So there's only 3 total. The other 2 happen in season 2. But he is the only one of those warriors to get 3 out of 4 edges and then lose the matchup. We'll put a link in the description. There was a particular academic article I found written by University of Massachusetts that really helped me a lot with the research on the Shaolin. I thought it was a really good source, so maybe we'll put in the description. Yeah, as far as the results go, twin hooks made the biggest difference. Maori, better luck next time, bud.
Walsh right now is in candlelight.
Sorry, it's getting dark out here, and I'm watching the simulation right now.
Okay. He's doing the custom modules. Yeah, I don't have much to add. I kind of said my piece with the bit about the twin hooks. I just want to draw attention to Sala's vaguely racist comment in this episode.
Oh, yes. We're going to get to that right at the end. I'm going to ask you to save that for me.
Well, I don't have much to add. It just it is what it is. I defer to Walsh.
It's probably a product of its time.
Yeah.
I defer to Sala's comment. That's all I gotta say at the conclusion.
All right. Walsh, do you have anything to add?
I mean, just after just watching the simulation right now, actually, the waxwood staff they mention is like incredibly hard to break, and like the first thing the Maori warrior does is break the staff.
Oh, I guess we could bring up, because the twin hooks sort of overshadow everything else. The staff gets more kills than the piercers, which I found interesting because the piercers are, the MA are by design like a lethal weapon, I'd say, and the staff is not. But it honestly,
you don't whip the MAs around at 1,000,000 miles an hour like they do the staff,
right? Yeah. Well, the staff's cool. It is what it is, and I guess it's not worth arguing about anything except because like the twin hooks got so many kills. I like did the difference on the results for all these weapons, and it's like, the difference between like the whip chain and the shark tooth club's like 35 kills. The difference between the twin hooks and the stingray spear is 560 kills.
Yeah,
that's rough. That's rough, homie.
I wonder if they actually put the Taiaha against the twin. I don't know how the simulation works, Max. You gotta come on.
Yeah, we have
come
no
on the show.
Yeah,
but if they put the Taiaha against the twin hooks,
again, in a matchup where there's no long range weapons, how does any warrior decide what to do? And I think Craig's right that like the Shaolin just went in with the twin hook every single time, because if the AI is worth a damn, right? Like if the AI that's running the simulation is worth anything, the computer would look at his weapons and recognize, all right, my best chances are with these things.
Yeah. Well, I've said this I think before on the podcast, maybe in private, but not if but when we get Max Geiger on, the very first question I'm going to ask him is explain to me how the sim works like I'm a baby.
Explain like I'm 5.
Yeah, I'm not going to settle for a little bit of BS of like the terrain and the armor and the alloys. I want you to explain.
Brendan, can we get a custom modules drop?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
all right. Yeah, I'm good to wrap it up if you guys are good.
Your final statement, Lucas?
Oh, I got some closing statements. Some harsh stuff gets said at the end of this and at the beginning of this. I wanted to touch on too. Whenever the original experts are picking their teams, Max says the Shaolin is outdated and old, and he wants the fresh new Maori.
What does that mean?
That was one of the biggest.
I think he's referencing pop culture.
I know,
like,
but...
oh, we've seen 1,000 kung fu movies. Where's the Maori movie?
So you give him the edge?
Well, hey, Max, you got your wish. The Rock is not a Maori. He's a Samoan, but you get a Pacific Islander guy in every movie that's ever going to be made until he runs for president, probably. So,
my personal opinion on this episode, to wrap it up, I just think it comes down to the area that these warriors are from. The Chinese Shaolin monk has access to Chinese technology, weaponry, steel forges. They're able to have this weaponry, and I guess the time frame that they're painting is after steel was commonplace, where they could have all this. I mean, they really drive it home the whole time that it's steel.
And even if it's not steel in
it's
real
still
life,
metal.
I think having a bronze sword is such an advantage over
bone
having
and
to
rock.
sharpen a rock.
Yeah.
Right. Like it, and iron just adds on that even more. Basically,
The Maoris are, limited to what they have on their island, which is essentially rock and bone. And I think they are just, their weapons were beaten essentially. So the whole picture that they paint with this episode, they do the very commonplace thing for season 1, where they boil it down to discipline versus size and brute strength. And at the end of the day, they give the little speech at the end where, the training and discipline wins over size and brute strength. And I don't want to use that as my thesis, because it's been done already. Everyone uses that. So at the end, Sala says that the Maori lost because the computer is Chinese.
it's probably made in China.
Shaolin, my little dudes. I mean, that's what computer says. Computer's probably Chinese.
Drop the bomb, the big racist statement at the end. A little cringe. So that brings me to my thesis.
Oh God.
Yeah, right.
Oh no.
Yeah. Abort.
All right, Brent, cut this out.
That computer and everything in America is made in China. Why is that? Find out on the Pretty Good Podcast coming up this week also on Xenu Games.
Episode 3 of the Pretty Good Podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, this episode just boiled down to, I in my opinion, the thesis of this is just better weaponry wins. They could both be super trained, but if you gave one weapon
better
to
pizza, better ingredients, Papa John's.
Yeah. I mean,
Papa John's, give us a sponsorship.
You could boil that whole episode down to this.
Steel wins. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Episode 7. We got episode 8 next week. That is William Wallace versus Shaka Zulu.
Yeah, I saw somebody in the comments, sorry I forget your name, was very excited about that episode, which was shocking. Because it's not an episode I think any of us really care a lot about.
It's Shaka.
Yeah, it is Shaka. If you watch this, buddy, tell us why you're excited, or email our email address. Because I'm very curious to know why you like that episode.
We'll address it.
We have an email address now, guys. It's xenugames1@gmail.com. So send it over. Guys.
Send a question or two. We'll read them and we'll ask it during the podcast. We'll bring it up. Something.
If you have something to add about an upcoming episode, we kind of just do them in order that they come out from the show. So if you know a lot about a warrior, want to set the record straight, obviously let us know.
And listen, Craig said he doesn't care if you're nice, but I read the emails. You got to be nice to me. That's a rule of this show. If you're mean to me on your email, I'm going to delete it. All right? I'm not even going to mention it.
Don't go in the comments going, "Hey, Lucas flubbed up that intro."
Yeah.
You can write that. I'll put that in.
Go ahead, write that. It was funny.
Yeah. Yo, shout out to Walsh, barely visible, but still hanging in.
I want to cut that video in right there.
I didn't want to get up to put any lights on. But whatever.
Hell yeah.
Thanks,
boy Walsh.
He doesn't look like he looks like a demon. He doesn't look like a unicorn.
Walsh, give us I want everyone before we go to give us a nice.
Yeah, can we end on that?
Yeah.
All right. On 3, guys. Give us your.
Tune in next week.
Yeah, let me give my. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We're Xenu Games. Catch us on the Pretty Good Podcast. We have some recent gameplay videos going up of Golf with Friends. We have Gang Beast coming out. Catch me and Matt on the First Time Fantasy Podcast. And we're going to close this out with a nice 3, 2, 1.